Dus dit is... Hey.
Er is nog iemand anders voor.
Ah, okay.
There's a gentleman that came here, Martin Sesho, so you want to equip him too.
Okay. Martin says I think I already had it.
Presentations, there's...
No, the presentations are fine, but look on the screen there.
Hey.
Could they be wider? Like, I feel that
Hey.
It's okay for you?
Good morning. If I could ask everyone to take their seats, please. They're saying that then it should come up. They were just saying it wasn't loud enough. Okay. Yes, when we're ready. So I'm told that people are still registering, so we'll have a few more minutes before the program actually begins. Such a pleasure. Andrea, is he going to take questions?
Sorry?
Is he going to take questions?
Do you have the agenda?
To be here, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this year's celebration and examination of antibiotic resistance European Antibiotic Awareness Day. We're going to begin with a welcome speech from Dr. Andrea Ammon, the Acting Director of ECDC.
So, dear Commissioner, dear Deputy Directors General, dear guests from EFSA, EMA and WHO, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the 9th European Antibiotic Awareness Day and to this event with the title, "The Future is Now." The European Antibiotic Awareness Day is a European health initiative which aims to provide a platform and support for national campaigns for the prudent use of antibiotics. Since the very first EU-level EEAD on 18 November 2008 by ECDC in the European Parliament in Strasbourg, this initiative has really gradually developed in an event that includes not only the European member states, but also countries beyond the EU. ECDC is cooperating with partners also in other regions of the world, basically across the Atlantic, with Canada and the US, and across the Pacific with Australia and New Zealand. And together with the WHO's World Antibiotic Awareness Week, this is now really a truly global initiative. And the recognition goes even further, because this year, among 6 shortlisted health projects, the EEAD initiative was awarded the European Health Award in the European Health Forum Gastein. And I would really like to stress that it's not only our agency that is honored by this award, but also all the countries who have participated in the initiative and took up the messages that we provided in their national campaigns. It is really a recognition that the EEAD has made a significant contribution to raising the awareness on the prudent use of antibiotics and antibiotic resistance, and that these issues should be given the highest priority for governments and health authorities. And when you remember that this year in September it was brought to the General Assembly of the United Nations, I think this is on a good way. So on behalf of ECDC, I would really like to thank our partners in the Commission, especially DG Santé, for their leading role and guidance, but also our colleagues in DG RTD, our sister agencies, EFSA and EMA, for their support. But I would also like to express a very special thank you to now WHO Director Shoshana Jakob, who as the first ECDC director picked up the idea when it was mentioned 10 years ago by Professor Hermann Goossens that wouldn't it be a good idea to have a European Antibiotic Resistance Day? And she jumped on this and made it over the years to this initiative. So thank you to both Hermann and Shoshana here as well. So today, ECDC will release the latest data on consumption and antibiotic resistance. My colleague Dominique Monet will soon be giving you the details. But what I would already like to say is that there are certainly some worrying trends. And we see that antibiotic resistance continues to increase for most of the bacteria and antibiotics under surveillance. In particular, the EU average percentage of carbapenem resistance in Klebsiella pneumoniae has again increased over the last 4 years. And we also see that combined resistance of the 2 last line antibiotics, carbapenems and colistin, is now reported. The situation is similar for other bacteria and healthcare-associated infections such as Escherichia coli. But there is also some good news. What we see is that following really sustained efforts over several years, most of the European countries have either stalled or even managed to decrease the trend on resistance against MRSA. Still, the levels are high, but at least this is an example that we can turn the tide. So it is possible to reverse the trend, but it needs a combined and sustained effort. So there is definitely no place for complacency. And if we fail to contain these highly resistant bacteria now, it would mean the end of modern medicine as we know. Hip and knee replacements, cancer chemotherapy, organ transplant wouldn't be possible without effective antibiotics. So in order to keep our current antibiotics effective, we must continue to join our efforts at the EU level and globally with the prudent use of antibiotics. And that is not only true for human medicine, but also for veterinary medicine. Here, we really need the joint effort from both sectors. This is a truly One Health initiative that is necessary to really take the fight to a success level. So, prudent use of antibiotics is really the responsibility of everyone. And with this important message, I would like now to hand over to our moderator for this morning, Marin McKenna. Marin is a well-known US journalist with an interest in antimicrobial resistance. She has given a TED talk on this topic and written 2 books. I'm very happy that she is here with us this morning. Marin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ammon, and thank you, all of you, both here in the room and also everyone who's watching on the live stream or following on Twitter, for joining in this event today. So, I arrived yesterday from Atlanta, where I live, and I had a lovely flight here on an Airbus 330. So, as I said, I'm a journalist, and most of my career has been spent reporting on epidemics and disasters. So it was sort of natural that as I got on the airplane, I thought briefly about the worst that could happen. So a transatlantic aircraft holds about 300 people. If we had crashed If everyone on that plane had died, it would have been a major disaster, international news, considered tragic, and incredibly destructive. That's one crash. Now, hold that image in your minds for a moment, because antibiotic resistance over the course of 1 year accounts for the equivalent of 6 of those aircraft crashing every day. In a year, resistance kills 25,000 people in the EU, 23,000 people in the United States, possibly 700,000 people around the year. And that is also a tragic and destructive toll. But unlike a single airline crash, it's almost never international news. Antibiotic resistance is an almost entirely preventable disaster that is created by our own actions, assisting biology, and yet it is an epidemic that is effectively hiding in plain sight. It does not get the attention it deserves. So I'm grateful, as a result, to be here at European Antibiotic Awareness Day, because this event and others like it around the world seek to bring this hidden epidemic to light. An epidemic that, let's remember, the predictions are, if we cannot slow resistance's course, then by the year 2050, the toll will be 10 million deaths a year, and cumulatively $100 trillion. The thing that I think people don't think about is that the effect of antibiotic resistance will be to undermine almost everything we consider to make up our modern lives. So I've been speaking about and writing about antibiotic resistance for almost a decade now. And when I speak to people, there's a reaction that I can almost always count on, which is that people themselves do not feel at risk. They assume that antibiotic resistance is something that affects hospital patients in intensive care units or nursing home residents near the ends of their lives, people whose illnesses are in some way remote from us, people with whom we cannot feel empathy except in a distant way. So let me tell you a story from my own family's history of what the lack of antibiotics can do. My father's grandfather emigrated from Ireland to New York City, and he and his wife had 4 children there. My grandfather, 2 sisters, and their youngest brother, whose name was Joe. Now, among Irishmen in New York at the beginning of the 20th century, there were essentially 2 career paths. You could be a policeman or you could be a fireman, and Joe chose to be a fireman. Now, that was not all of his life. He was also a distinguished amateur athlete, and at the time I'm going to tell you about, he had just gotten married. But the most important thing for this story is that he loved being a fireman, to the point that on his days off, he would go and spend extra time at the firehouse. So on one of those days, to make himself useful, he volunteered to polish all the brass, the railings on the fire truck, the fittings on the walls, and one of the fire hose nozzles, a big, heavy chunk of metal, toppled off a shelf and hit him, and bruised him and probably scratched him a bit. And after a few days, he started to experience a fever. And a few days after that, he was rushed to the hospital. The year was 1938. 3 years before the first successful human test of penicillin. They had nothing to offer him, and he died. Not from old age, not from massive trauma, not from cancer or heart disease or any of the things that kill us now in the West, but from a simple infection, practically a scratch. So the thing that I think about when I look back at my great-uncle's story is not only how tragic it was, but how utterly normal it was. If you look back through history, most people died in the way that my great-uncle Joe died. And all of that changed when antibiotics arrived. Infections that killed people in the dreadful way that he died could be cured in hours, if not days. There's a reason why they first called antibiotics the miracle drugs. And as all of you who are gathered here and all of you watching know, it's a miracle that we squandered by overusing and misusing antibiotics in hospitals, in primary care, in agriculture, in allowing them to be available over the counter in parts of the world, in neglecting their role as environmental pollutants, and industrial effluent. So since the beginning of the antibiotic era, we have been locked in what is effectively a game of leapfrog between bugs and drugs, a game that we're losing as resistance advances and companies are slow to make antibiotics again. And in this decade that I have been documenting the advance of resistance, I have met an extraordinary number of people for whom the antibiotic era is effectively almost over. A man in his 50s who developed a resistant infection after surgery for diverticulitis, which led to 7 more surgeries, a total of 6 months in the hospital, the loss of his job, a stress illness that put his wife in the hospital too, and because this happened in the United States, close to bankruptcy as well. A woman in her 40s who had what appeared to be an everyday urinary tract infection, who realized that the infection was carbapenem resistant and had ascended to her kidneys and was endangering her life. People who've received new joints and new heart valves and then had to struggle with their implants being coated with resistant biofilms. Children who had what looked like common flu that turned out to be necrotizing MRSA pneumonia, who died in hours. So what I fear we don't think about is how the loss of antibiotics will put all of us in the position of those unlucky few people. If we lost antibiotics, we'd lose any protection for people with weakened immune systems, so we'd lose cancer patients, transplant recipients, premature babies. We'd be unable to use stents to ameliorate strokes, pumps to reduce the effect of diabetes. We'd lose prophylactic dosing of antibiotics before surgery and the ability to cure surgical infections afterward. And what worries me most is that antibiotics made our lives so safe that they effectively severed an understanding of the cause and effect that earlier generations took for granted. So when I was growing up, my grandmother, on the opposite side of the family from Joe, was completely obsessed with cleanliness. Your hands could never be clean enough. The floors could never have been scrubbed frequently enough. She cleaned the entire house, a brownstone in Brooklyn of multiple floors, from top to bottom, every day. And I thought she was paranoid. But my grandmother was born before the antibiotic era began. And what she understood, and I didn't, was that without antibiotics, the most minor intrusion, a scrape, playing sports, a scratch in the garden, a sore throat, a broken leg, carried the risk of killing you. So we've been more casual with antibiotics than we should be, such that in the United States, where I do a fair amount of my work, 1 in 3 antibiotic prescriptions in hospitals is inappropriate. And in China, a reliable model predicts that within a few decades, if we do not reverse the trend for antibiotic use in livestock, 1/3 of all the antibiotics used in the world will be given to Chinese livestock. So in all those trends, Europe has been a bright outlier. The first countries to control agricultural antibiotic use, the first to set national formularies, the first to mandate the kind of data collection that we'll talk about today that makes tracking and controlling antibiotic resistance possible. And Europe faces challenges, of course. We will hear about some of those in that event today, this event today. But if any area in the world can be said to be working hardest and most successfully on the problem of resistance, that place is probably Europe. So I'm especially pleased and honored to be part of this day with you today. So I'm going now to introduce our first round of speakers. If they would come up, we'll begin with Commissioner Vytenis Andriukaitis, Commissioner for Health and Food Safety of the European Commission, and following that, Martin Seychelles, Deputy Director General of the Director Generate for Health and Food Safety, and Rukshandra Thagia-Akli, Deputy Director General of the Directorate General for Research and Innovation. Please welcome all of them. Sure, but if you would like to speak from the podium, you're welcome to.
Yes, we can do it that way, and then we go for the... Yeah.
Dear like-minded friends, colleagues, dear Andrea, Marion McKenna, sorry, I heard your speeches, and I know that for me it's much easier to continue in the same way. Okay, it is a great pleasure to me to be today at the European Antibiotic Awareness Day, and I am very lucky that Susanna, Jakob, and Herman, they are founding couple of this, founding father and founding mother. And I'm particularly pleased that this year the Awareness Day received the European Health Award at the Gastein Forum. I want to start with a study. Now everyone loves studies. As a scientist, I know that this study is not worth much. But nevertheless, let me share it with you. My brilliant trainees went to 3 pharmacies around Schumann area and asked a simple question. How many packs a day of antibiotics you sell? What they learned is the following. On average, these 3 pharmacies sells 41 packages a day. If we imagine that these trends are common, there are 5,000 pharmacies in Belgium. 5 times 41 is 205,000 packs a day. It is a lot. It is a lot. As I said, I am not claiming it is a real study. So I am sure I could dump it on social media and claim that last study shows 41 packs of antibiotics are sold in Brussels per day. But I won't do this, because obviously doing real study takes a bit more than visiting 3 pharmacies. And many people out there really need these drugs, so we should not stigmatize anyone. But what we are interested in is what all the pharmacists that my excellent trainee Christina talked to said. They said they sell too much. And way too often, the prescriptions are inadequate. They also added that people tend to get angry if they don't get antibiotics prescriptions, and often is a question of knowledge, education, and awareness. So, do we need this day? My answer is simple. Yes, we do. I will get back to that. Let us go back to history now, as Marion just said, and Andrea also. It is now more than 60 years since penicillin was isolated in a laboratory, bringing a dramatically new approach to infection control. Antibiotics were the wonder drugs of the 20th century. Think about it. Mortality from abdominal injuries decreased from 66% in World War I to 24% in World War II. Thanks in part to the introduction of antibiotics such as sulfanilamide and penicillin, which prevented the development of infections. Many people felt that diseases caused by bacteria were conquered and soon would no longer exist. Unfortunately, an accumulation of factors, in particular the excessive and inappropriate use of antibiotics and poor infection control practices, have progressively turned AMR into a massive threat for humankind. Despite many initiatives undertaken over the past couple of decades, we have not kept pace with the rise of antibiotic-resistant infections. And now the rise in AMR is jeopardizing human and animal health, as well as sustainable food production and development. With rising resistance and no action, we would be facing a return to the pre-antibiotic age, as Marion just said, where people died from common infections and minor injuries. This would have major consequences for people's health and for the economy, not only in Europe, but right across the world. Please look in such very interesting slide. You know, European Union is a very red one, very red. Here you see planes, trains, cars, ships, people, goats, animals, every day. Global trade, global movements, global import-export flows. And EU is under huge pressure. And it means that we have big challenge when we see possibilities that resistant pathogens, they have opportunity to spread globally. Bacteria have no border. It is part of import-export. In this slide, you can see the example where one country, Finland, they calculate in 1 year. Imagine the whole Europe and then the world. It is how antimicrobial resistant bacteria are imported from third countries. Resistant bacteria share their genetic material with other bacteria, creating resistant strains, and it travels. Take the case of the MCR1 gene. The MCR1 gene makes bacteria resistant to the antibiotic colistin, which is used as a last resort drug to treat patients with multi-drug resistant infections. The MCR1 gene was first detected in some bacteria in China, but within 6 months, plasmids carrying the MCR1 gene were found in isolates from animals, food, the environment, and humans worldwide, including the EU. So no country can tackle this in isolation. AMR has clear links to human disease, animal disease, and the environment, making one health approach essential, and health in all political sectors also essential. The approach was adopted, such one health approach was adopted back in 2011 in the European Commission 5-year action plan against the rising threats for AMR. The objective was to span all sectors and aspects of AMR: public health, animal health, food safety, biosafety, production, transportation, research and innovation, and international cooperation. As the action plan drew closer to its end, an evaluation was conducted to assess its impact. I am pleased that the evaluation concludes that the action plan provided clear added value. I know that some NGOs blame us that we are not enough acting at our AMR. No, we create added value, believe me. Not only did it serve as a symbol of political commitment, it also stimulated actions within member states, strengthened international cooperation, provided a framework to guide and coordinate activities on AMR at international level, and took a one health approach across multiple sectors to protect both human and animal health. Most member states have adopted national action plans with activities relating to the prudent use of antimicrobial agents, surveillance of AMR, and surveillance of antimicrobial use. The Commission issued guidelines on prudent use of antimicrobials in veterinary medicine last year and will be issuing guidelines for human medicine soon, in December. Yes, Andrea? Yes, okay, in December. On the animal side, legislative proposals on veterinary medicines and medicated feed are currently under discussion in the European Parliament and in the Council. Those texts are critically important. The European Parliament is ready to start negotiations on the Commission proposal, but the Council is still in the preparatory stage. I call on member states to speed up their discussions, because we need progress in this field. In the research domain, the evaluation concludes that efforts are increasingly coordinated and efficient as a result of the action plan. Since 1999, the Commission has invested over €1 billion in research projects in this area. Another dimension of the action plan in which the EU has increased its efforts is international cooperation. I have already spoke about trade. It is clear that AMR is a global health challenge. That's where awareness issue becomes important as well. Whenever I am visiting non-EU countries, I always cite the opportunity to highlight the issue of AMR and encourage taking global measures, such as WHO implementing policies and the development of OIE standards. And it will be good to think to provide idea to introduce the same methodology to detecting bacteria, monitoring, and of course, and keeping eyes around the globe and having the same data. We need to have common methodology around the world. A good example of a strong EU voice at international levels of the EU support to the World Health Organization in the adoption of the Global Action Plan on AMR last year. I participated in the G7 debate on AMR, which led to ambitious commitment by head of states and health ministers. Plus, the EU, the US, Canada, and Norway continue to cooperate under the umbrella of the Transatlantic Task Force on AMR. And we are continuously raising this issue bilaterally with other important trading partners, including China, Brazil, and others. This September, the high-level meeting on antimicrobial resistance at the United Nations General Assembly, I stressed the commitment of the EU in working against the rising threat of AMR and the importance of the One Health approach. 10 years have passed since the Commission banned the use of antibiotics for growth promotion in animals, and our commitment is still to do more and develop further targeted actions at EU level. A recent Eurobarometer survey measuring AMR knowledge in non-EU countries, ranging from our neighborhood to large countries such as Canada and India, shows that overall knowledge about antibiotics globally is very low. It means that we will discuss with CNN, with all media to draw attention also. Where is their input on awareness issues? People do not know that antibiotics do not kill viruses, or that they are ineffective against colds. Our little study that I mentioned in the beginning illustrated well in its relatively little capacity, of course. So what are our next steps? First, we will launch in 2017 a second AMR action plan. For the years to come, my main ambition and first priority is to make the EU the best practice region in the field of AMR and ask you all to be partners. We will join our forces on different levels, on different responsibilities, and move forward. To make this possible, I believe every member state should, as a matter of priority, be equipped with a comprehensive action plans against AMR, pursuing the One Health approach, and of course using health in all political sector tools. To assist this process, I will put in place in 2017 a One Health AMR network, which will bring together member states experts from both the veterinary and human health domains, as well as actors from the environmental sector, because it's very important to draw attention on environmental composition. My second priority is to give a stronger push to innovation and research for the development of rapid diagnostic tests, as well as vaccines and other alternatives for antimicrobials. I vaccinate myself against influenza. I vaccinate myself against meningitis. I vaccinate myself against hepatitis. Why? I know very well that vaccination is part of the game to reduce the use of antibiotics. Why? Because then you have virus, and then next step is bacteria. And then you must treat with antibiotics. I keep opportunity to remember you. This vaccination is also part of fight against AMR. It's very good today to remember that there is a good time to vaccinate yourself against influenza, against flu. Okay, my second priority is to give a stronger push to innovation and research for the development of rapid diagnostic tests, as well as, my third priority is to enhance EU international action and added value on AMR in order to continue having a strong voice at international level. In the EU, we have been working on AMR for the last 15 years with ambitious measures, coordinated action, and clear added value for member states. I will continue working in this direction both at European and international level. Ladies and gentlemen, like-minded colleagues, today on European Antibiotic Awareness Day, it is no time to sit back and rest on our achievements. A lot remains to be done in terms of awareness, certainly, but also in prevention and implementation. Implementation and enforcement, two brilliant words, and coordination of our actions. One way to raise awareness on AMR is to give visibility to those who actively fight against it. I would like to take this opportunity to announce the short list of finalists for the European Union Health Award for NGOs and for the Better Use of Antibiotics Prize. The finalists for the EU Health Award, which rewards initiatives of NGOs contributing to reduce the threats to human health from AMR within the European Union, are National Order of Veterinarians, France, Plan Eco Antibio, building bridges between human health professionals and veterinarians. The European Consumer Organization, Campaign on Antibiotic Resistance from Farm to You. Patients' organizations with you, a national roundtable with the Bulgarian Parliament, rational antibiotic use in children, common mission of doctors, patients, and institutions. Healthcare without harm, safer pharma, reducing pharmaceutical pollution. Federation of Veterinarians of Europe, multi-annual strategy and action to fight AMR. Stichting sorry for pronunciation. Green Healthcare Program and its project Modua and SOS Pharma H. World Alliance Against Antibiotic Resistance, acting to preserve antibiotics initiatives. On behalf of my colleague Carlos Moedas, I would also like to announce the names of the finalists for the Better Use of Antibiotic Prize. This is a prize for the development of a rapid test to allow healthcare providers to distinguish between patients with upper respiratory tract infections that require antibiotics and those that can be treated safely without antibiotics. The finalists for this €1 million prize are Immuno Po C, Pulmocheck, and Minica HNL. Finally, I would like to congratulate all the participants and I wish them all the best of luck. Thank you, colleagues.
Commissioner, thank you so very much for those very encouraging and strict words. We appreciate it. I'd like next to welcome to the stage Martin Seychelles, Deputy Director General for Health and Food Safety. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Director Aman, Mrs. McKenna, Commissioner Andriukaitis, for your very inspiring words about this very important issue of antimicrobial resistance. And on behalf of the Director General for Health and Food Safety, I would like to thank you all for being here today. This has been quite an important year for antimicrobial resistance. We have seen certainly awareness at the political level has increased considerably. We have seen this year alone statements by the G7, the G20, the UN General Assembly, the EU and its member states, the World Bank, OIE, WHO. Of course, statements alone will not resolve the issue. But we know that on these important issues, political leadership is essential. The big challenges of our time, we know, for example, from others, such as climate change, political leadership, or the lack of it, makes all the difference. So this is a very encouraging sign. And why is this needed? Because, as we have heard, the issue on our hands is extremely daunting. According to the current projections, the annual deaths worldwide from drug-resistant infections may increase from 700,000 to up to 10 million every year by 2050. As our moderator, Mrs. McKenna, recently wrote in an article, this would mean one death every 3 seconds all around the world. Truly mind-boggling. In addition, it is projected to result in a cumulative loss in global output of $100 trillion the World Bank estimates that drug-resistant infections have the potential to cause at least as much economic damage as the 2008 financial crisis. Of course, it is largely up to individual member states to take action, but the EU has an important role in supporting the efforts of member states, particularly in helping to address the spread of AMR between countries and in using the EU public health competencies and tools in medicines, animal health, research, and other areas as effectively as we can to combat this problem. And as you have heard, the EU has indeed been working very actively on AMR. As Commissioner Andriukaitis highlighted, the European Commission has conducted an evaluation to assess the impact of the 2011-2016 Action Plan on AMR, which was not only a symbol of political commitment, but also has shown added value at EU level. On the human health side, we have been able to observe, thanks to the evaluations of the Council recommendation on the prudent use of antimicrobials, that most member states have implemented a combination of actions focused on infection, including awareness-raising campaigns and national guidelines for infection prevention and control. On the animal side, the legislative proposals on veterinary medicines and medicated feed include important provisions to combat AMR. Although this package is currently being discussed at a regretfully slow pace in the Council, we very much count on future presidencies to accelerate discussions and achieve rapid progress on these files. Besides, the Commission has also published guidelines on prudent use of antimicrobials in veterinary medicine in order to provide member states' authorities, farmers and veterinarians with practical examples of what is being done in other EU countries to promote the prudent use of antimicrobials. It is also important to note that both for the human and veterinary fields, the monitoring and surveillance of antimicrobial resistance and consumption of antimicrobials have been improved thanks to the action plan. In the research domain, the evaluation highlights that the Commission activities and the Joint Programming Initiative on AMR have contributed to the coordination and collaboration in the area of the development of new antimicrobials, alternative treatments, new business models, diagnostics, and appropriate use. And my colleague, Deputy Director General Ruxandra Draghia-Akli, will soon give you a further insight on the numerous and successful initiatives undertaken under the action plan. At international level, we have also strengthened our work outside of the EU. AMR is a global problem which cannot be solved by any one country or region acting alone. We continue to do this through our bilateral relations with third countries, but also multilaterally. For example, through our European Reference Laboratory for AMR, we support capacity building for AMR monitoring in the food chain in member countries of the WHO European region. Through the renewed partnership project between the EU, the African, Caribbean, Pacific group of states, and the WHO, the Commission has provided some 10 million euros to support the strengthening of pharmaceutical systems and improving access to quality essential medicines. We have also strengthened our cooperation with the United States, Canada, and Norway through the Transatlantic Task Force on Antimicrobial Resistance, which has recently published work on new business models for the development of new antimicrobials. Today, one of our goals is to raise awareness on the threat to public health that AMR is in order to preserve the effectiveness of antimicrobials for future generations. And focusing on awareness, earlier this year we published a Eurobarometer report on antimicrobial resistance based on interviews with over 27,000 people across the EU. Although the vast majority of people who were interviewed, 84%, said they were aware that unnecessary use of antibiotics makes them ineffective, only 43% of people reported that they think that antibiotics do not kill viruses, and 56% are aware that antibiotics are ineffective against cold and flu. So there is still a very significant awareness issue. Such views arise because of lack of accurate information amongst the public, and information on the correct use of antibiotics has clearly only reached a third of respondents. It is nevertheless encouraging that Europeans are aware that policy action to tackle this problem is needed at all levels. with 35% in favor of action at global and EU level and 28% at national or regional level. An international Eurobarometer has also been conducted, and we publish its results today. They highlight that overall, knowledge about antibiotics is low, and that in most countries, only a minority have received information about not taking antibiotics unnecessarily. It also reveals that in every country, doctors are considered to be the most trustworthy source of information on antibiotics, and they are mentioned by more than 60% of respondents. This is in line with our efforts to encourage responsible use of antibiotics by healthcare staff and the public. Finally, and this is, I think, a very good point to note, a majority agree that using antibiotics to stimulate growth in farm animals should be phased out. This is good news for the EU because, as you know, an EU-wide ban on the use of antibiotics as growth promoters entered into effect back in 2006. So what more can be done? Commissioner Andriukaitis has renewed the commitment of the European Commission to work on AMR. The European Commission will follow the Council conclusions of June 2016 and will present a new EU AMR action plan in 2017. For this reason, on the 24th of October, the European Commission published a roadmap for a communication on a One Health action plan to support member states in the fight against AMR. This new action plan will focus on the added value the EU can bring to the fight against AMR by supporting member states, particularly in establishing, implementing and monitoring their national action plans. Commissioner Andriukaitis has already mentioned the establishment of a One Health network. But to support the development and implementation of national action plans on AMR, the Commission will also use the EU Health Programme to co-fund a joint action on antimicrobial resistance and healthcare-associated infection together with EU member states. France has offered to coordinate this joint action, and key aspects will be led by the Netherlands, Sweden, Greece, Spain, and Norway. And we hope it will be launched early next year and it will run for 3 years. We'll also continue to strengthen the surveillance and monitoring of AMR. We have already started work on this very important issue with our agencies, the ECDC, EFSA, and the EMA, which will propose by September 2017 a list of outcome indicators as regards surveillance of antimicrobial resistance and antimicrobial consumption in humans and food-producing animals. To help antimicrobial stewardship in the healthcare system, we are supporting the development of EU guidelines on the prudent use of antimicrobials in human medicine. These have been drafted by the ECDC with the active input of stakeholders and member states and were discussed in the EU's Health Security Committee last week. And we expect to be rolling them out with the support of stakeholders during 2017. The action plan will also focus on bringing together EU funds and instruments in order to promote innovation and research on AMR. We have already started working to help support investment by health systems in combating AMR. We are collaborating with the OECD to jointly fund work on the economic impact of AMR and the cost effectiveness of policy interventions. With data mainly provided by the ECDC, the OECD will build an economic model of AMR in human health, which should be ready to be used by policymakers in just over a year. Finally, of course, the EU will focus on strengthening further its leading role in global fora, notably with international organizations and with our major trade partners. Aside from the ongoing partnerships and work already mentioned as part of this objective, we are also collaborating with the World Health Organization and other partners in the European Observatory on Health Systems and Policies to undertake analysis of member state policies and provide recommendations for improvement. And next year, we hope to extend our cooperation with WHO Euro to help WHO provide more direct support to EU member states on AMR. Ladies and gentlemen, it's clear, I think, from all of this that the EU can indeed add value to what member states are doing in supporting exchange of information and good practice on national action plans, in providing expertise through our agencies, ECDC, EFSA, and EMA, in addressing the cross-border aspects of AMR, in collaborating on surveillance and the development of EU guidelines and technical information, in funding of research, and in helping to coordinate action when there are serious cross-border threats to health due to outbreaks of resistant infections. I would like to conclude by once again stressing, underlining the priority that our Director General and the Commission as a whole and more broadly give to tackling AMR. We are determined to do everything in our power to address this issue using a One Health approach across all relevant sectors in order to prevent AMR becoming an even greater threat than it already is to our health systems, and to our economy. Thank you very much.
Dr. Seychelles, thank you so much. I welcome to the stage now Dr. Ruxandra Dragiakli, Deputy Director General from the Directorate General for Research and Innovation. Thank you.
Dear Commissioner, dear colleagues, indeed the future is now. And our research and innovation programs that are geared towards Europe and globally are in fact the proof that we are working on actually preventing the 6 Airbuses crashing every day. So we are taking indeed our inspiration, starting with 1999, on the various programs that have been put forward to tackle the growing resistance to antimicrobials, by indeed taking to heart the One Health approach to addressing bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi in our research and innovation programs, with very special attention to a number of issues, such as understanding how the antimicrobial resistance develops, development of new therapies, obviously rapid detection methods and diagnosis, new strategies to prevent infection and transmission, and of course looking at the healthcare systems, new strategies to improve prudent use. Commissioner Andriukaitis mentioned our monetary, if you wish, efforts in this area, more than €1 billion invested previously, and in Horizon 2020, our current program for research and innovation, more than €300 million have been invested in the first couple of years of the program. So, of course, the inspiration as of lately, starting with 2011, came from the action plan against the rising threats from antimicrobial resistance, and in particular in a number of actions to promote public-private collaborative research and development to bring new antibiotic to patients, reinforcing and coordination of research efforts, and last but not least, fostering international collaboration. And I'm taking advantage that both Herman and the colleagues from the Innovative Medicine Initiative are here with us today to highlight the new drugs for bed bugs, probably the largest public-private partnership in the area of AMR in the world, with a budget of more than €650 million, both from us, the public partners, and from the pharmaceutical industry, with a number of topics or projects that are embedded in this particular program. Actually, I would like to highlight, in particular, COMBACT, the Pan-European Network for Clinical Studies, 697 hospitals, 426 laboratories, and 6 clinical development programs, harnessing the knowledge from 34 countries that are working on this issue together. Another program that I would like to highlight is Drive AB, because here we are looking at a new economic model for antibiotic R&D. Very many times people are saying the small businesses, industry, even the academic investigator are not incentivized to go into this area because it is very long term research, very costly, no return on investment, and of course we are looking at developing and testing new models allowing a return on investment delinked from the sales volume. And I'm very happy to mention the news as of yesterday. One of our projects funded in FP6, Erin Tafar, Oxford University, received funding to work on new antibiotic drug targets that entered into one of the Innovative Medicine Initiative projects called the European Lead Factory, to screen targets against this library of compounds. At the time, 300,000 compounds. Now that library is more than 500,000 compounds. So if anyone else is interested, it's still available. An identification of a small molecule hits has been found against this target, and as of yesterday, that molecule entered into the enable to develop this early stage hit through clinical trials. So I would like to point out this example because it shows the continuity of efforts in the area of antimicrobial resistance. We also stimulated innovative small businesses to go into this area, and a couple of years ago actually put forward topics specifically calling for small and medium enterprises to use their innovation for different aspects that are actually targeting AMR. Something that my colleague Martin Seschel mentioned and Commissioner Andriukaitis, really the vaccines, the diagnostics, alternatives type of therapies such as phage therapy, or looking not only at bacteria, but at other types of interventions. New class of antifungals have been found, antimicrobial catheters to prevent, we've heard about the catheter-associated urinary tract infection, so that was another approach. And very importantly, diagnostic tools, very rapid diagnostic tools that would allow point-of-care diagnostic differentiating not only the bug, but does that need an antibiotic treatment or not? Commissioner Andriukaitis also mentioned our prize, another type of stimulating the community to look at the better use of antibiotics. The challenge was to develop a rapid test that would allow healthcare providers to distinguish at the point of care between patients with upper respiratory tract infections that require antibiotics and those that can be treated safely without them. Indeed, we do have our shortlisted candidates, and we are looking forward to awarding soon this particular prize. We have also heard about the joint programming on antimicrobial resistance, and I'm very happy that Carlos is here today sharing his experience as a leader of the GPAMR. This is, in fact, an activity that pulled together national research efforts. 22 countries are, in fact, embarked in this endeavor. It's expanding its membership, including to our international partners. The goal being to support the development of national strategic research agendas around the AMR, and also following the One Health approach and looking at what WHO is doing in this area. Up to now, the GPAMR has already launched 4 transnational calls, 55 million euros. Indeed, networking what is happening at the member state level. And of course, we are fully supporting that type of activity. The last action point was the international cooperation. So I'm very happy to say that, for instance, the clinical trial network that has been developed in IMI, in the new drugs for bed bugs, is going global. The GPI AMR is expanding its membership internationally. Colleagues from Canada, Japan, Australia, and South Africa are joining. And we do have studies that are looking at children both in Europe and in West Africa in order to better characterize, if you wish, the infections and their management. So patients, we hope that will benefit from this going global type of research. So in conclusion, while we have discussed a lot about the prudent use and about the One Health approach, we really have to look at the aspects of what is happening when research and innovation are coming into play. We will not be able to reinvent penicillin, but we hope that at least we will be able to join into this fight against antimicrobial resistance from really increasing the number of companies that are involved, strengthening the base of academics, SME that is participating, boosting the development of new and innovative players in this area, and last but not least, really joining forces at the national level in order to better implement what is coming from these research and innovation programs. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much to all of our first round of speakers. We now are going to have about half an hour of moderated discussion. So if the three of you would not mind coming up to the stage, Commissioner, would you join us? Okay, that's fine, thank you. The Commissioner sadly has to leave our gathering, so if you would mind thanking him again. So there are a number of stakeholder organizations who have pledges to make and have comments to make on the issue of antibiotic resistance. So I'm going to start by seeing if any of them are in the room and would like to give their pledges. Would Health First Europe like to speak? Are you here? I heard a voice. Where is... They're saying in the booth, you need to push a button.
Okay, now it's working. Hello, good morning. I'm Melina Raso. I'm Health First Europe Executive Director. I'd like to know if you have any idea how stakeholders can be more involved on the next European Commission joint action on the upcoming program. Thank you so much.
Would one of you like to respond to that?
Yes, indeed, the participation of stakeholders is essential for any joint action. I mean, joint actions, as you know, are bringing together the various actors who need to be involved and who need to work together to address a given issue, in this case AMR. So as you know, in every joint action, we always look at having specific activities or structures to make sure that the stakeholders are involved. And particularly in a topic like this, it's extremely essential because, as we have heard, one of the major challenges we face is awareness. And we all know that you cannot really have sustained political action to address an issue, which is what we need here, if there is not also awareness and public support. And therefore, I strongly believe that the stakeholders have a role to play. And when we mean stakeholders, we have to talk about stakeholders in the widest possible sense. So certainly there are the stakeholders in the public health arena, but also stakeholders in other sectors, the environmental organizations, also in the stakeholders representing business and industry. We have to make sure that we are all focusing on this problem together, because it is a problem, as we have seen, which requires solutions from a number of different policy areas. So I fully agree with you. We really have to make sure that stakeholders are central in this joint action.
Thank you so much. Is anyone present from the Joint Programming Initiative on Antimicrobial Resistance? Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, thank you to the panel for introducing us in her presentation. Just to insist a little bit, this is a network of countries collaborating in research and designing the policy, also the research policy in all these countries for this problem. We have 22 countries right now, and we just closed a call on transmission, and we are announcing a new call on interventions to prevent acquisition and to prevent transmission and how to combat antimicrobial resistance. We will launch that in January next year. We have 22 countries right now, including Canada, Argentina, Japan, Israel, but we still miss some of the countries in the European Union. So it's important to let them know that we are still open for anybody to come and contribute to our joint effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the room for our speakers? Please go ahead. And please identify yourself. There should be a, in the arm of your chair, I think there is a microphone, so that people behind you can hear you. Press the button.
Okay, now? Now?
Go ahead.
My name is Valuka. I come from the European Association of Pharmacy Students. And one of the points which we are very passionate about is education in general, because healthcare professionals are the first ones who have the direct patient contact, especially pharmacists. So my question was, what are your thoughts in terms of how can we better educate both professionals and students in order to be the ones promoting this fight against AMR? Thank you.
Would either of you care to respond to that?
Yes, I mean, the role of the various health professionals is, of course, crucial, because as we have seen, one of the main conclusions of the Eurobarometer was the high degree of trust that citizens have in health professionals, and indeed health professionals are the main source of information about antimicrobials, as they should be, of course. Now, you mentioned the role of the pharmacist, and this is, I think, quite crucial. My personal feeling is that we are still not fully utilizing the role of the pharmacist, and particularly the community pharmacist, in our health system in general. The pharmacist is, for many people, the closest health professional to deal with everyday issues. And I think that's a very valuable channel that we can certainly use much, much better than we are today. And this is not just true for AMR, by the way, but AMR is a good example. Of course, one thing we have to do is also make sure that there is a more team effort between the doctors, the pharmacists, other professionals, because ultimately we also have to make sure that we are consistent in our messaging. It's no use to speak to people and come up with different nuances. I'm not saying that the information is contradictory, but even if we don't communicate in a coherent way, that will end up confusing the public rather than helping them. So I think I would stress these two elements: the central role of the community pharmacist in particular, and also the need to involve the various health professionals in working together to address this issue and establish a very strong working relationship. Thank you.
In our research and innovation programs, we do often include work packages that are looking at dissemination, at education and training in the context of the program, both for the health professionals that are involved and patients, if that is applicable. Also, so for instance, for our activities as far as the prices are concerned or results from our projects, we do actively present present them at scientific meetings, at professional meetings, and working with the healthcare professionals to really pick them up. We can have whatever best point of care diagnosis that would differentiate between a viral and microbial infection. If it isn't used, obviously that will have no impact whatsoever. So while I cannot say that we have a direct program for training the pharmacists, from all these activities that are linked to our research and innovation programs, we do touch them, and we hope that that information is really picked up.
Thank you very much. More questions from the room? Yes. So let's see. Go ahead. And then the person in front of you, and then there's a question behind. Yes.
Hospital pharmacists in 8 teams in hospitals, and yesterday we heard very good results and good actions from our Dutch colleagues. So we are now collecting good practices across Europe, and our role as an association is to disseminate this knowledge and good practices also in other European hospitals. We see our role in teams in the hospitals a very crucial one, because hospital pharmacists are educated and trained enough to be a good supporter of microbiologists and infectious disease specialists in the hospitals in determining, surveying and monitoring the antibiotic dose, the intervals of treatment and lengths of treatment. So we are looking forward if the EU action plans and EU guidelines bring these specific roles of 8 teams in the hospitals, including hospital pharmacists and the role in it. Thanks.
Do either of you care to react to that?
Yes, I mean, of course, as we have just mentioned previously, ECDC has been working on the guidelines for prudent use of antimicrobials in human health. But what will really be important is the implementation of those guidelines. And to implement those guidelines properly, you need to have the systems in place, particularly in hospitals and other healthcare settings, to ensure that actually those guidelines will function. And again, the same argument applies here. It's essential to do this by working with the health professionals and in a collective effort, because we know, hospitals are essentially systems, and those systems need to be organized. Very often, a lot of the poor results we see in certain hospitals and certain health systems are because of system failures. The management of the hospital has not fully taken into account antimicrobial resistance, and very often when we see the best examples, what we notice is that it's sometimes very simple but effective measures that can make a big difference in bringing down the rates of infection. So this is, I think, a crucial point, and certainly the participation of the health professionals, such as the hospital pharmacists, is essential.
We had another question. Yes, please.
Perfect. So my name is Katrina Nidok from Medicines for Europe's association representing generic and biosimilar pharmaceutical industry. Thank you for this perfect event today and all the political willingness, which is essential to tackle this issue. And as well, we are very much committed partner in this fight in terms of looking how to promote prudent and rational use of antibiotics that patients need them. Now, following this discussion very actively and engaged, what I have feeling is what is a bit lacking is attention on existing antibiotics and how to make sure that they are available, the whole panel of antibiotics, so there are no shortages for doctors that when they prescribe the optimal treatment that actually have antibiotics available. So a bit of reflection on that point would be welcome. Thank you.
I can take it a little bit differently and start with a diagnosis. We do have quite a number of projects, and there is an ongoing prize, which is a longitude prize put forward by our UK colleagues that is really looking at immediately identifying the microorganism that is involved in a specific infection and then being able to have the antimicrobial resistance pattern of that particular microorganism identified really at the point of care. 10 million pounds, whoever would like to go for that price is still open, I believe, until like 2019. So the first component of delivering the right treatment is having the right diagnosis. I don't think that generally speaking, we are lacking an antibiotic or another, and we have seen that, in fact, they are available in the pharmacies. But instead of having this is the most likely antibiotic for your infection, really going and hitting the right bug with the right therapy will be essential. And I think that people are looking at personalized medicine as a personalized for the, for the rich or for rare diseases or for whatever but the antimicrobial resistance is a perfect example of how this personalization can in fact work and have a tremendous social value.
Thank you so much for that. It's really fascinating to me the degree to which challenges and money have flowed into the space for diagnostic tests. That would be so crucial in making sure that drugs are used appropriately. There was one more question. Yes, please go ahead.
I'm Raymond from Luxembourg, but I'm today representative of the European hospital physicians. And as you said already, the antimicrobial treatment and the resistance of antibiotics is a challenge for the team working in the hospitals. And I agree totally with you that not only the prescribers, the physicians are involved in this battle, but all the responsibles of the hospital, as well as the management, but also the pharmacists, the microbiologists, and so on, because before the patient, we are all responsible, not only the prescribers. And the system must be right, and therefore you are completely right with your action plan. We support it, but I think in the hospitals, we must more be a team player than an individual player. And that's fundamental for many aspects of our society. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would you like to react?
One of the key figures, I think, which really is striking from what we've heard today is the fact that over 20,000 patients die every year in Europe from drug-resistant infections in hospitals. This is part, of course, of the much bigger picture also of hospital-acquired infections in general. But we know very well that when we look at the best practices, and there are many in various parts of Europe, that is, I would say, a low-lying fruit. A lot of progress can be achieved to bring down the numbers, very often through more effective management, coordination, also ensuring the kind of things you were talking about, making use of the skills and not expertise of the various professions. Because we know these numbers can be brought down. Of course, there are always going to be cases which are difficult and we cannot, but the number is simply too high. And if we look at the best performing countries, there has been remarkable progress in lowering this, I would say, the most unacceptable phase of antimicrobial resistance. So clearly, I think this is the way forward, how to work with hospital managements, for example, that we really need to look at the way in which we can organize ourselves and make the best use of the expertise of the various professions. That, I think, is an issue of management.
So there's someone behind you who's been waiting to ask a question, I'm afraid. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Franjo Čajić. I am a DigiSanti trainee. I wanted to ask if you know, do we already have some new antibiotics development which could potentially support the current ones? And also, since in some countries you can still reach antibiotics without medical prescriptions through pharmacies or internet, how can we tackle this in future, or at least limit it?
So I guess that I can take the first part of the question, and indeed, in the program that I have presented in the new drugs for bed bugs, there are a series of compounds that are in clinical testing. So we are looking forward to the results for those clinical trials. We cannot, jump the gun and say we have everything that we need, but with the joint efforts of what is going on at the member state level, in the partnership between the public and the private, in the context of the Innovative Medicine Initiative, and with our academic and SME efforts in our other programs, I do think that we will little by little see this pipeline that is coming. As far as the part of regulation, I think that I can defer to Martin, but of course that is a very complicated issue.
Well, complicated but also simple in a way, because it needs political will. It needs political will. I mean, that in itself is the reality. The sale of antibiotics without prescription is simply unacceptable. I mean, this is something which has to be addressed. Now, of course, we should also, I think, make the best possible use of the technology we have. Just to give an example, there have been experiments carried out with linking, using electronic prescriptions to link the prescription with the diagnostic. So basically this would resolve one issue, because the prescriber could actually prescribe the antibiotic, but then the antibiotic would be dispensed if the diagnostic confirms that. So this is a way of shortening the cycle. And I think with using, for example, electronic prescriptions in a much more coordinated way, we can actually help to control this issue. Regarding the development of new antimicrobials, it's not just new antibiotics. There are also some very exciting innovative approaches, particularly in our small companies, which are looking at research on a wide variety of things, from phages to immunotreatment to also probiotics. So really, I think we have to look at a much wider field of view, because we have to look at all the tools we have available. This is simply a problem which was not going to be resolved by one particular approach. No matter how much money we pump into it, we have also to innovate and use also all the tools that we have. So that is, I think, a big aim also of what our research is trying to do.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone in the room from MedTech Europe who would like to offer a statement? Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for your first-year partner on this initiative.
I believe it's come on.
Now it's working.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. MedTech Europe is the first-year partner of this Antibiotic Awareness Day. We have done a pledge this year, and we are very happy to hear that both fronts where we can play a part is infection prevention. We have means to support that in hospitals, as well as having accurate and rapid diagnostic testing in order to differentiate bacteria through other causes, and also to discover the level of resistance. So my question would be, industry is developing the tools. What else would you expect from industry to engage in the AMR action plan, for example?
Thank you very much.
I can take the part that is linked to research and innovation and mention an instrument that, in fact, I haven't mentioned in my presentation, but it is present in our toolbox, and that might be very interesting. We have developed in Horizon 2020 a partnership with the European Investment Bank and with the European Investment Fund. These are, in fact, loans, are not grants, but are looking at the last phases of research. So very adequate. Our first loan was actually to a small company called Cavidi for a rapid test looking at viral load in HIV patients that are on therapy to see if that therapy has to be adapted. Looking at, in fact, upscaling, commercialization, and then being able to disseminate that particular technology in hospital settings. So I'm mentioning this because this particular mechanism is called Inofin infectious diseases, can very well be used by the medtech industry to speed up bringing the products to the market, but also help with the implementation at the hospital setting, at the practitioner setting.
Another key challenge is, of course, as we all know, the business model aspect, because this is indeed one of the toughest nuts to crack. There is work going on already. Ruxandra mentioned the Drive AB project under the IMI, which precisely addresses this issue, because it's clear we have to de-link the return on investment from the sales volume. We cannot have the sales volume driving the return on investment, because otherwise we are going to be back to square one sooner than we think. So this is a big challenge. There are various possible models which are at the moment being looked into, but I think we really have to accelerate on this front, because this is really, I think, an aspect which also is maybe disincentivizing research. If this is not clear, the research money will flow in other directions, and that's already happening to some extent. So this, I would single this out as a big issue, how to make this worthwhile for industry, at the same time preserving the antimicrobials for the really needed cases.
Thank you. I know there were questions in the back of the room. Since sales volume was just mentioned, I just want to ask whether anyone is here who would wish to speak from EPRUMA, the European Platform for the Responsible Use of Medicines in Animals. Is a representative here from them? Yes, please.
Thank you. Is the yes on? Thank you very much indeed, and good morning. May I first of all congratulate the speakers. I was very pleased this morning. I'm a farmer from the UK. EPRUMA is the European Platform for Responsible Use of Medicines in Agriculture, in animals, sorry. And I was really pleased this morning to hear both speakers making a distinction between European agriculture and global agriculture, because they are very different. We are operating to very different standards, and there's huge efforts being put into place now to lower the use across all sectors across Europe. And EPRUMA is firmly committed to the responsible use of veterinary medicines, including antibiotics, in agriculture. And we are a multi-stakeholder platform working at EU level. Our contribution to fighting antimicrobial resistance is creating greater awareness amongst farmers and agriculture generally, and understanding the concept of responsible use amongst all stakeholders, not just farmers, but across the veterinary practice right through, both in the EU and nationally. We have national plans in most countries now which are driving things along. We care about reducing antimicrobial resistance and embrace the responsible use of antibiotics to support animal health and welfare, and by extension, of course, human health, the One Health concept. And we work together to preserve the efficacy of antibiotics in the future of both animals and people, therefore adopting the One Health approach. And the EPRUMA's motto on this is antibiotics should be used as little as possible and as much as necessary. And the 10 member organisations we have recently co-signed a declaration on their 7 commitments to responsible use, which include facilitating facilitating information, exchange on best practice, developing best practice frameworks, and supporting transparency on use through surveillance and resistance monitoring. And at EP Ruma, we work to deliver these commitments in the coming years. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Do you wish to react?
Yes, thank you very much for that. In fact, the One Health approach is really the cornerstone of the EU's approach from the very beginning of this work. And clearly also, there is also to some extent in this sector also a business model issue. We have to make sure that whatever we do can also enhance the profitability and viability of our farming and agricultural sector, which is one of the most important sectors for Europe. Europe is a major player globally in terms of agricultural products. And we have to look at how we can do that. There are, again, here some best practices, some very good examples from a number of countries in Europe that have really also dramatically reduced the usage of antimicrobials in veterinary sector and really with no negative impact at all on the profitability. I would say, actually, if we manage also to communicate this very clearly to our consumers, it could actually be a big plus because as surveys have repeatedly shown, European consumers don't want to consume antibiotic residues unnecessarily. So they're very strong, and this actually can help us. We have also to be more proactive, I believe, in our trade agenda, because Europe is a major player globally in terms of trade. In any trade discussions we have with any other country, agriculture is always a major issue. And there I think we have to actually ensure that this One Health approach is taken up globally, which means working with the international organizations to really promote that approach. So it's not enough if Europe does its thing properly but remains in isolation. We have to work with the international organizations and with key robustly. But I am very confident that we can achieve win-win situations on this because to some extent it's already being achieved. Just make sure that this is then applied to all types of business models that we have in Europe. And we have a wide variety from very intensive breeding to small-scale breeding. So that has to be fully understood. But one thing I'd like to single out as well, the importance of the Council and the Parliament, especially the Council, making faster progress on the veterinary medicines proposal and the medicated feed. Because although this tackles issues other than AMR as well, but AMR is one of the core objectives of this legislation, and we simply need an updated and much better legal framework than what we have today.
Thank you. So someone has been very patient in the back. Please go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a gentleman behind you who's going to speak first. Yeah. Yes, you. Sorry.
Is it working? Yeah, okay, yes. Thank you. My name is Luka Bajnšak. I'm the president of the European Dental Student Association. And, well, we have been working actively on the issue of antimicrobial resistance with the European Pharmaceutical Student Association and Medical Student Association since 2014, and we've published a joint policy on this matter. One of the issues that we found, and one of the questions during our working groups and our general assemblies is, and a question maybe, is approaching this problem from the aspect of doing proper antibiograms. So, when prescribing antibiotics, the identification of which bacteria do we have in the infection and whether it is actually viral, fungal, or what have you. There are some new rising technologies, for instance, Malditoff, the matrix ionization method that offers very quick identification of the pathology of the infection. So maybe this would be the way of approaching the issue of patients getting angry, and what we've already risen here, of getting angry if they do not receive antibiotic prescriptions from their doctors. So what do you think about this? Is the medtech industry also could be involved in this and could support the development? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
From the research and innovation perspective, as you probably have noticed on my slides, we are putting forward, when we are opening a call, just a problem statement, whatever is a societal challenge that we would like to tackle, or the scientific issue that we would like to address. How? In what exact domain, what are the alliances that are created within the projects, are coming really completely bottom up. So it is for the scientists to address the problem from their own perspective. And I can give you an example. We have an instrument now, a funding instrument that is looking in helping small and medium enterprises with developing products. This is one of the initiatives that have been put forward in Horizon 2020. We had a call in 2014, 2015 that was looking at clinical validation of biomarkers and or medical devices. And it was very interesting to see the topics that were put forward. So the grantees that won the awards, it went from biomarkers from Alzheimer or breast cancer to actually devices that were used in dental practice and everything in between. To your point, the simple answer is yes, you can address the issue together with the colleagues from the medtech industry in the most appropriate way that you might find. The European programs are really open to these innovative solutions.
Yeah, and of course, the importance of diagnostics has been emphasized rightly many times. And it's clear we need to have much faster diagnosis and accurate diagnosis, and technology can help. But technology on its own, if it's not fully integrated in the system, will not really help unless it is really well integrated, which means we have also to look at how this technology could then be utilized in the best possible way. Because after all, having tools is one thing, but then we have to be aware, because a lot is said about patients putting pressure on doctors. Well, a patient typically presenting himself or herself to a doctor with an infection is often quite at an acute stage of the infection, which is when they are really uncomfortable and possibly also in already some time has passed by. So time is very much not on the prescriber's side, and therefore the turnaround is crucial. I mean, we simply have to make sure that this is there, and also that the accuracy is there, that the test really gives us the correct diagnosis all the time, because obviously this has then to be embedded in the system. But I think the possibilities are there, but we have to make sure also that we address the systemic elements.
So I'm afraid time is not on our side either. We have already slid off schedule, and so I'm going to call a halt to this first session. Please be aware we have a second longer spot in the agenda for more questions after the next set of speakers. So it is now 11:14. I'll give you 10 minutes for a coffee break. Please come back at 11:25, and please thank our speakers. If everyone could take their seats, please. Oh, you're very kind. Thank you very much. Tough. We're tough, we Americans. Okay, I think just about everyone is back. Thank you all very much. I'm sorry that coffee took a little longer than we expected. So we're now going to move to the technical briefing part of the program, which is going, as a journalist, this is the stuff that I rejoice in, which is the most granular data possible. I hope you all share my enthusiasm. If not, I hope you had a lot of coffee. All right, we're going to begin with Dr. Dominique Monet, who's head of the Antimicrobial Resistance and Healthcare-Associated Infections Program at the ECDC. Dr. Monet, please begin.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all of you to take the time to come here. My role here is to present you with the latest data from ECDC on antimicrobial resistance surveillance and antimicrobial consumption surveillance in humans. As every year, we're able to deliver to you an update on last year's data from two networks, the European Surveillance Antimicrobial Resistance Network and the European Surveillance Antimicrobial Consumption Network, EARSnet and ESACnet. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank the people in member states that are working actively to deliver this data to ECDC and all the colleagues at ECDC from EARSnet, ESACnet, and communication colleagues that make this possible. So let's start with the community, what's happening outside of hospitals. And as part of ESACnet, we have two ways of expressing this antimicrobial consumption data in the community outside of hospitals. In defined daily doses per 1,000 inhabitants and per day. That's the graph that you're seeing on the left, with a threefold difference between the member state that uses the least antibiotics per population and the member state that uses the most antibiotics per population. The good news is that 3 member states are showing a decrease. Now, this rate or indicator that we use sometimes does not exactly reflect prescriptions. So we're also using packages or boxes of antibiotics per 1,000 inhabitants and per day, and that's the table on the right side of the graph. And here we're seeing more decrease in member states. Because this better reflects prescriptions. Now this has an effect on resistance. Well, let's pick one pathogen that is responsible for community infections, Streptococcus pneumoniae, and here the percentage of invasive isolates that are resistant to macrolides. And you see that between 2012, here at the bottom, and 2015 on the right, there have been changes in member states. The map is becoming less orange and less red, sorry, and a bit more orange. This is probably a combined effect on decreasing antibiotic in these member states and also probably a better vaccination against pneumococcal infections. I also take the opportunity with this slide to tell you that all our data that we present each year have moved to the ECDC Surveillance Atlas of Infectious Diseases. And you have the link at the bottom of this slide. This is an interactive database where you have access to all the data as per this morning. So let's move to hospitals now. And let's move to one pathogen, Staphylococcus aureus, and resistant to methicillin, also called MRSA, and the percentage of Staph aureus invasive isolates that are resistant to methicillin, or RMRSA. You see that over the years, there have been a change in the right direction in many member states, with a decrease in all these member states that are showing an arrow, a decreasing arrow on the right graph, and it's a trend, statistically significant trend from 2012 to 2015. So this is also a good development in all these member states, and this is the result of increasing infection control practices in healthcare, often because there has been a national plan addressing this. Now, the percentage of Staph aureus bloodstream infections that are MRSA is still above 25% in many member states, and this is still a cause for concern. But our real concern is about gram-negative infections, and in particular, bloodstream infections due to Klebsiella pneumonia that have combined resistance to 3 major antibiotics used in hospitals: third-generation cephalosporins, fluoroquinolones, and aminoglycosides. We still see the gradient with less combined resistance in Klebsiella pneumoniae in countries from the north of Europe as compared to the south of Europe, but we'll see very high percentages in some countries. Not surprisingly, the countries that where doctors have to treat patients with those infections, these doctors use more of last-line antibody groups, in particular the carbapenems. And here on the right side of the slide, you have the use of carbapenems in the hospital sector in member states, with increasing carbapenem consumption, not surprisingly, in those countries that have issues with multi-drug resistant Klebsiella pneumonia infections. The consequence is what we're seeing now. If we look at Klebsiella pneumoniae bloodstream infections, and these are data from EARSnet, we see that in some member states, there's a very high percentage of Klebsiella pneumonia infections that have become resistant to carbapenems, more than 10% in Romania, more than 5% in Malta, more than 25% in Italy, more than 50% in Greece. The situation has not changed much for these 4 countries, but overall, the percentage for the EU, EA of Klebsiella pneumoniae that are resistant to carbapenem has increased from about 6% to about 8% from 2012 and 2015. And it's increasing in countries that were below 1%. You see Portugal, for example, and Spain at the bottom of the graph. So doctors that have to treat patients with Klebsiella pneumonia infection that are already resistant to third-generation cephalosporin, fluoroquinolones, aminoglycosides, and carbapenem are using colistin, because colistin is the only antibiotic that works. This is what the doctor that needs to treat a patient would receive as a result from the lab. All the antibiotics marked in red are the one to which the infection is resistant, and there are 2 that are marked in green that are for which the infection is susceptible, one of them being colistin. So on the red graph, this is the consumption of polymyxins. This is mostly colistin in the hospital sector in member states. And you see all the arrows going up that indicate a statistically significant trend over the past years. So this concerned, of course, those countries that have major problem with carbapenem-resistant Klebsiella pneumoniae, the one that were in red and orange on the map that I showed you earlier, but also countries like Norway, for example, or Denmark, that are seeing more patients. So the use is very low. The use of colistin is low, but it's statistically increasing. And some countries now are seeing the consequence, that is Klebsiella pneumoniae isolate that would be resistant to both carbapenems and colistin. This is due to chromosomal mutations in those isolates. This is not due to the plasmid-mediated MCR1 gene that you heard about, but it's concerning. In these 4 countries in orange, the percentage of Klebsiella pneumoniae infection that have been tested for both carbapenem and colistin is already more than 10%. That are resistant to both antibiotics is already more than 10%. This year at ECDC, we prepared a new document, a policy briefing, that provide options to address the urgent threat to patients and healthcare system in the EU due to the fact that these last-line antibiotics, carbapenems and colistin, are failing. What are the options that are presented in the policy briefing? There are actually actions that some member states have been put forward and have been able to control outbreaks. First, having a national multidisciplinary task force with experts, but also with political support to the task force. Having an adequate ratio appropriately trained infection control practitioners. Implementing active screening of those patients that are at risk of carrying those bacteria resistant to last-line antibiotics, and this must be done upon admission at a hospital. Isolation of patients who are carriers of highly resistant bacteria, either in single rooms or if there are many patients in so-called cohort wards. And finally, the single most important measure, that is hand hygiene to prevent transmission of bacteria in hospitals. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Monet. Next, we'll hear from Marta Hugas, Head of Unit from the European Food Safety Authority. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for Professor Ammon for the invitation to be here today. I'm here to present the surveillance of antimicrobial resistance in food-producing animals, and we have heard also this morning from Dr. Seychelles that monitoring and surveillance of antimicrobial resistance is very important, and it's important to understand the development and dissemination of antimicrobial resistance in food-producing animals, also to provide relevant data for risk assessment, and also to plan targeted interventions and to measure their effects. So today I'm going to present some data from food-producing animals. In the European Union, EFSA is the agency responsible for risk assessment regarding food and feed safety, and we provide independent scientific advice to support decision makers on the possible emergence, dissemination, and spread and transfer of AMR to humans and animals through the food chain, so that the best control options can be established to reduce this emergence. In doing so, we take an integrated approach in line with the concept of One Health, so approaching it with different disciplines in EFSA, from animal health to biological hazards to feed, and also in collaboration with member states and with our sister agencies, EMA and ECDC. Every year, we produce, together with ECDC, a use summary report. And monitoring of EMR has been carried out in the EU since many years, but since recently, in 2013, there was this Commission implementing decision that strengthened the fully harmonization of the data collected. And now, following this decision, the data we collect is fully harmonized and is non-aggregated data, but isolate-based data, which allow for the analysis of multi-resistance. And we collect the data from animals and from food, but also we assess the resistance of zoonotic bacteria, but in particular for ESBL, ampicillin C, and carbapenemase producer Salmonella and indicator E. coli, we have now a specific sampling plan with a specific protocol plus a monitoring scheme to increase the sensitivity of the detection. As I said, every year, together with the CDC, we produce this EU summary report on antimicrobial resistance that brings together the human cases of foodborne infection, mainly from Salmonella and Campylobacter, and the resistance from zoonotic bacteria, and also indicator bacteria, plus also MRSA. The 2014 report was published beginning of this year, and we are now finalizing the 2015 report, which will be published beginning of next year. The main results, here we present in a very summarized way the main results from this report. That was the first one after this new legislation was successfully implemented, with a larger scope of antimicrobial resistant monitoring. And also in 2014, the focus was on poultry population. So the data we'll present is mainly from poultry. Now in 2015, it will be from pigs and calves, and in 2016, again for poultry. So the results we obtained is what there was frequent resistance to fluoroquinolones observed already since several years, but low resistance to other critically important antibiotics, and also to low co-resistance to critically important antibiotics. There was also low occurrence of ESBL ampicillin C producers, and importantly, no carbapenemase producers were detected from this monitoring, but we identified some resistance to colistin. Here we see the level of resistance to third-generation cephalosporins in the different poultry populations. So in broilers, in laying hens regarding Salmonella, and in broilers and in turkeys regarding Escherichia coli. This was the first time that an effort was made to characterize the enzymes behind resistance, and we see that in general there was low occurrence to ESBL and Penicillin C producers. 2.3% Salmonella in broilers, 0.3% Salmonella in laying hens, 6.1% of indicator E. coli, and 2.5% of indicator E. coli in turkeys. These are about colistin. I'm sorry that the heading is not shown. And in 2014 was the first year that monitoring of colistin resistant in Salmonella and E. coli from animals was mandatory. And also for the first time there was a harmonized detection. The data we have, it's only available for poultry. And, but they are important data because they constitute a baseline against future data, and that if we do any changes, then we'll be able to be measured these changes against the baseline. The resistance, the resistance data I'll now present doesn't equal the occurrence of the transferable gene MC1on2, and detailed monitoring of colistin-resistant bacteria is required to confirm that horizontal gene transfer is not involved and that the overall prevalence remains low. This slide shows the occurrence of resistance to colistin, which will also be followed up by the next speaker presenting the EMA advice on colistin. And we see that from the 2014 EU harmonized monitoring, this indicated that 0.9% of indicator E. coli from poultry and 7.1% of indicator E. coli in fattening turkeys were colistin resistant according to the interpretive criteria applied. Regarding Salmonella, we see slightly higher figures, but we need to take them with caution because as this was regarding only poultry meat, we are aware that the main serobars were the serobars from the group 0 to 9, so that enteritidis and Dublin, that it seems that they show intrinsic resistance or less sensitive to colistin. So for the non-clinical surveillance purpose, the epidemiological cutoff values can be difficult to determine given certain serobars demonstrate this subpopulation that are less sensitive. And also another important point to be taken into account is that the member states experimented some difficulties in accurately determining colistin susceptibility in Salmonella. So there was a reference testing with a URL ongoing, and we will have a better and more accurate results that might confirm or not confirm these positive results in Salmonella. In order to better assess the public health relevance of colistin-resistant indicator E. coli and Salmonella detected by member states in poultry and meat derived thereof, the multi-drug resistance in colistin-resistant isolate was further assessed, and the occurrence of microbiological and clinical resistance to fluoroquinolones and third-generation cephalosporins as well. Here we see that the multi-resistance patterns of colistin-resistant indicator E. coli and Salmonella appear to be different. We see that from E. coli, so the percentage of isolates showing multi-drug resistance is quite high, and this is not the case for Salmonella. This may be suggesting different mechanisms of resistance in E. coli and Salmonella, and or false positive isolates which may exhibit a degree of intrinsic resistance to colistin. So thank you very much for your attention. And just to mention that soon we'll have the 2015 report of this EU summary data on antimicrobial resistance from food and food-producing animals, which will be focused on pigs and calves. Thank you.
Dr. Hugas, thank you so much. We'll hear now from Dr. Helen Jukes from the European Medicines Agency.
Okay, so I'd like to start by thanking the ECDC for inviting me here to speak to you today about the updated advice to the Commission on the use of colistin in food animals in the EU. So the European Medicines Agency received the first request from the Commission for advice on the use of colistin back in 2013. And the reason for this was that we were aware at that point that colistin was becoming increasingly important for use in human medicine because of the to treat multi-drug resistant bacteria. So the advice was prepared jointly by colleagues from the veterinary and the human sides at the European Medicines Agency, EFSA and ECDC, and together they formed the AMEG group. And one of the conclusions of the report of this group was that despite the use of colistin in veterinary medicine for over 50 years, there was still no horizontally transferable mechanism of colistin resistance. So all that changed last year when, following reports of increased colistin resistance on routine surveillance in isolates from animals in China, they then identified the presence of the MCR1 gene on a transferable plasmid. And by very early December last year, we'd already had the first reports of MCR1 in isolates from Europe. And this led the Commission to request the AMEG group then to update their original advice on colistin and to provide further risk management measures. So by April of this year, following routine screening of isolates from livestock in the EU, we'd already identified the MCR1 gene in several member states from all major food-producing animals. And MCR1 had also been reported in human clinical cases as well. So the isolates from animals dated back to 2005 and in humans back to 2011. And this map, which I think the Commissioner showed us earlier this morning, shows the distribution of countries that had reported the presence of MCR1 up until June of this year. So what were the factors that were taken into consideration for the updated advice? Well, as we've just heard from Dr. Hugas, the prevalence of colistin resistance in isolates from food animals in the EU still appears to be quite low, although clearly we just have the data, we really have the data from poultry at the moment. However, the MCR1 gene is located on different types of plasmids, but these plasmids similar plasmids are found in the same bacterial species from animals, food, humans, and the environment. And this suggests that there's probably some cycling between the different reservoirs. We also know that in vitro, the transfer of MCR1 plasmids between Enterobacteriaceae has shown to be high. And the MCR1 gene is also closely linked to genes encoding resistance to other antimicrobials, and this leads to the potential for co-selection of multi-drug resistant organisms. So although the level of colistin resistance still appears to be quite low in the EU and stable, the nature of this new MCR1 mechanism of resistance leads us to suspect that the potential for resistance is now high. So in our considerations, we also looked at the importance of colistin in human medicine, and Dominic has addressed this in his talk earlier on. So we know that the use of colistin in some EU member states has increased substantially in recent years. And we also know that colistin is an antimicrobial of last resort that's used to treat serious hospital-acquired infections caused by carbapenem-resistant and multi-drug resistant gram-negative infections. And the increasing use of colistin in hospital medicine is increasing the selection pressure for colistin resistance. We also know that in some countries there are very few alternatives available, and that the prospect of new alternatives is very limited. So what are the risk management considerations for the use of colistin in animals? Well, as I mentioned earlier, colistin has been used in veterinary medicine for many decades. SVAC data indicate that colistin made up 6.6% of the total veterinary antimicrobial use. That's based on the sales from 2014. And colistin is used in livestock to treat colibacillosis. This is a very serious disease, mostly seen in young animals with high morbidity and high mortality. Now, unfortunately, there are very few alternatives to colistin, due to levels of resistance to certain other antimicrobials. And some of the alternatives that we have are regarded as critically important antimicrobials in themselves. So although we did give consideration to suspending the use of colistin in food animals, there was a concern that this would just increase the selection pressure for resistance to other CIAs and also cause animal welfare issues. So based on these considerations, the AMEG group made 2 key recommendations. So the first of these was that colistin should be added to category 2 of the AMEG's classification. So these are the antimicrobials that are regarded as higher risk, and they should be reserved for use in conditions which have or are expected to respond poorly to other classes. And the second recommendation that we made was to set an EU target to reduce the use of, to reduce the consumption of colistin within the next 3 to 4 years. And I'll just move on to the next slide here to explain this to you. So this graph here shows the sales of colistin for use in food-producing animals in milligrams per population correction unit. And the population correction unit, or PCU, is just a technical measure which takes account of the different livestock distributions, the different biomass of the livestock production in different member states. So this allows us to do a comparison in use across the different countries. So you can see from this slide here that there's quite a large variation between countries in their use of colistin. And you might suspect that this could be due to differences in the livestock profiles, but it's quite notable that certain countries that have a high pig and poultry production, such as Denmark and the Netherlands, still have a low use of colistin below the yellow line there, which is the 1 milligram per PCU level. So the decision was taken that a target could be set of around 5 milligrams per PCU, and this was based on the fact that this would achieve roughly a 66% reduction in colistin use. And then finally, it was also recommended that there should be a follow-up of these recommendations in 3 to 4 years. Firstly, to see if the targets have been achieved, and secondly, to see if there has been any impact on the prevalence of colistin resistance in isolates from food-producing animals, although clearly it may be a little bit early at this stage to tell. And then finally, we also suggested there should be a review of the ongoing need for colistin in human medicine at this time, and also of the situation relating to colistin resistance in humans. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and also I'd just like to give a very quick acknowledgement to the members of the AMEG group, and especially to Gerard Moulin, who is the chair of that group, and to Boudouin Katri, who is the rapporteur for the advice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jukes. Dr. Jukes gets my personal award for being the first speaker today to actually come in under her assigned time. So I think she gets extra applause for that. I know how hard it is to be disciplined and stick to time, because when I am assigned time slots, I usually run over them. So I'm very grateful, thank you. So finally, we will hear from Dr. Danilo Lofawong of the World Health Organization for Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And since the award for timekeeping has already been given, I can relax and take all the time I need. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Andrea, for the invitation. I'm going to be a little bit less technical because I was also asked to go beyond the EU and even global, if you will. So I'm the program manager for antimicrobial resistance at the WHO Regional Office for Europe. And I'm also here speaking on behalf of our regional director, Susanne Jacob, who unfortunately could not be here, but she sends her regards and wants me to assure you that antimicrobial resistance is very close to her heart still. One of the evidences of that is that we are the only regional office that actually has a program dedicated to antimicrobial resistance. Time for action, I think we can all agree on that. It's great to be here. It's great to work on antimicrobial resistance just now. It's been coming for a long, long time, and much of this momentum that we see now started here in the European Union. Efforts already started at the turn of the century. ESAC was formed, EARS was formed, and now ESACnet and EARSnet. So monitoring all the actions we've seen on reducing antibiotics as growth promoters started in the European Union. But that momentum was expanded to the rest of the European region in 2011 by the adoption of the Regional Strategic Action Plan on Antibiotic Resistance by the Regional Committee. So all 53 member states have adopted this strategic action plan to ensure that all countries have a comprehensive approach to tackling antibiotic resistance. And then 4 years later, the World Health Assembly followed by adopting this global AMR action plan, which by and large is the same plan. It's equally comprehensive. It has a One Health approach. It's affecting infection prevention and control, etc. So all the work that we've been doing in the European region has already been contributing to the implementation of the global action plan. And then this was also mentioned quite recently in September. The United Nations General Assembly discussed antimicrobial resistance. And this is only the 4th time that a health issue has been discussed at that high level, which is really an accomplishment in itself. But AMR also needs this kind of discussion. It was mentioned as a fundamental long-term threat to human health, sustainable food production, and development. And all the heads of states and world leaders adopted a declaration which ensured a whole-of-government intersectoral approach to antimicrobial resistance. So we look very much forward to seeing this implemented in countries so that it's not just a health issue or an issue for the veterinary sector, but that all sectors are providing their input and their support to addressing antimicrobial resistance. Now the next slide I'm going to, not that quickly, but skip over, because these numbers have been mentioned several times today, and this is one of the reports that really helped putting AMR onto the very high political agenda, because of course economic and human health costs speak to the imagination and prioritization of the politicians. So moving on to sustainable development. As I mentioned, or as former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon mentioned in his speech during the UN General Assembly, it's also very much a development issue, which means that antimicrobial resistance, if not addressed, can endanger the achievement of sustainable development goals. And it's not specifically mentioned, but of course it will affect the good health and well-being sustainable development goals. But not just that, it will also endanger the achievement of other sustainable development goals that are related to poverty, related to development, related to the environment, etc. So it is really important that everybody knows which role they can play to control antimicrobial resistance. This is also, I'm happy to announce that this is the 2nd World Antibiotic Awareness Week, and it's fully acknowledged that the idea of a World Antibiotic Awareness Week is built on the European Antibiotic Awareness Day, which is also why we timed it around the 18th of November. And as in Europe, Antibiotic Awareness Day, we also focus on healthcare workers as our first line of defense to the control of antimicrobials. Here in Europe specifically, we also actively support the Antibiotic Guardian campaign of Public Health England, and I will explain why a little bit later. I also take this opportunity to announce the launch of the 2nd AMR surveillance report from a network called CSER. CSER stands for Central Asian and Eastern European Surveillance of Antimicrobial Resistance. And it's basically the expansion of EARSnet. This is a network that is building surveillance capacity in the non-EU member states using the same methodology as used in EARSnet, so that our methods and our results are compatible and comparable. And we also support the countries in our region with their campaigns by making sure that they have, similar to the ECDC, that there are materials available that they can use for their campaigns. And we also support some of the major events around Europe. Particularly one is going on in Istanbul right now. And earlier this week, there was a high-level roundtable meeting in Moscow where the Russian Federation will now start discussing the development of their national action plan. So some of the new materials this year were, again, related to healthcare workers. Where I need to point here. There we go. So the materials from last year, they're not dated, so they're actually still very valid and valuable, and they can be used. But particularly for this year, we made some new materials, some infographics and posters addressing the various groups of healthcare workers, such as doctors, nurses, dentists, pharmacists, etc. And basically to raise awareness on how they can contribute to decreasing antimicrobial resistance. But also on our website, we highlighted stories of healthcare workers to make sure that the issue comes closer to home, that maybe they can recognize some of these. I'm having trouble with this. So we have stories from a doctor from Armenia, from former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, in Georgia, nursing students in Glasgow. But also celebrities have come on board and want to champion antimicrobial resistance. We published a video of a Dutch television host / author / actress who had a very personal, nasty experience with the superbug infection, and she is willing to share that story with the world to raise awareness. And also in the regional office, our patron is Her Royal Highness Crown Princess Mary of Denmark, who also made a web statement on the occasion. But as I said, we're actively supporting the Antibiotic Guardian campaign. Where it's here on our website, of course, but one of the things that we've done is to take the website and made a Russian version of that. Because one thing that we noticed is that amongst the 32,000 pledges that were made until recently, only 4 came from Russian-speaking countries. So now through this, we hope to expand the awareness throughout the region. So depending on who you are, you can choose either a healthcare professional or a member of the public or a student. You can choose a pledge and sign up to be an antibiotic guardian. And one of the reasons why we engaged in this particular campaign was this article where they showed the impact of these pledges. Because I have to admit, I was quite skeptical in the beginning. So like, would I remember a pledge that I made and would I act towards it? And what is who am I accountable to? But some of the main outcomes of this article was that 2/3 of the participants reported to actually act according to their pledge, and more participants reported a sense of personal responsibility after the campaign compared to before the campaign. So now we'd like to see this expanded. And I'd also like to take the chance of showing the CSER annual report. It contains the progress of where the CSER countries are going. These are 19 countries that we are working with currently. It has detailed results from 7 countries which are already providing data to us. And I know 7 doesn't sound like very much. It's not a number that will make big headlines. But for those of you who were involved in the early days of EARS and ESAC, know how difficult it is to get a country ready to provide data, to set up surveillance, to make sure that everything is checked, and then to convince them to share as well. It also has the results of the external quality assessment, which we do each year, also together with ECDC, which will help laboratories assess their own quality and provide information on how to improve that. And this year, for the first time, we have joint maps with ECDC, so that we can start showing a bigger part of the region and start showing the picture, which is actually one of Susanne Jacobs' long-time dreams as well. You all are very familiar with the traffic light maps of ECDC, and there's always the same areas of the region that were gray, and now we're slowly filling those countries with colors. So in chapter 2 is a progress chapter. We have tables which give a quick overview of where the countries are, in this case in terms of coordination of antimicrobial resistance. Like, do they have a focal point? Do they have intersectoral coordination mechanism? Are they in progress, or do they not have this yet? Also, more related to surveillance, we have these indicators on top, giving the current status. Then there is a chapter 5, which is a reader's guide. We really felt we had to include this to caution the reader that, of course, not all data has equal validity. There are some data in the report that may not be entirely representative to the country, either because of the way they're sampled or because of the numbers. And we want to make the reader aware of that. This table shows you the criteria we use to divide countries into level B data, which is maybe not representative, and level A data, which on the one hand provides guidance to the reader, but on the other hand also provides a roadmap for improvement to the countries that are providing level B data to get to level A data. Because countries are by nature competitive. Of course, they want to have the highest level. In Chapter 6, we have the country-specific data, which is set up in a very similar way as the EARSnet data, which I will not go into detail with. I urge you to download the report later. And then here are the maps. You see that these are now we're bringing more color to Europe. Of course, the Central Asia countries, Ukraine and Moldova, and Caucasus, these countries we are working very hard with, and some of them are very close to sharing data, but they're not there yet. But hopefully in the next few years, we'll be able to see that there are more countries that will share data. Still not working? There you go. Chapter 10 shows you the results of the external quality assessment, of the methods being used. So good, I want to show you again. And of course also the results itself from the external quality assessment. And then finally, the Global Action Plan was calling for a global antimicrobial resistance surveillance system, which is looking at these specimens and priority bacteria. You'll notice that CSER and EARSnet, for that matter, are currently taking care of the top part of this global surveillance system. But of course, if you start building a surveillance infrastructure in a country, then through the years you can add more specimens and more bacteria to that, and we can start reporting to the global surveillance system called GLASS. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and urge you to sign up as an antibiotic guardian, make a pledge, and live by it. Thank you.
So thanks to our four speakers who gave the technical briefings, and we're going to start another round of moderated discussion. I think it would be good if the four of you came up. There are more chairs than there are people, so please choose as you like. I'm going to begin with checking in with a couple of organizations who were not able to speak in the first moderated session. So is the European Public Health Alliance here, and would you like to offer a statement, please?
There we go. Very happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm from the European Public Health Alliance. My name's Nina Renshaw. Thank you for having us back again. We've been a participant and a supporter for several years now. And we're very pleased this year that it's really been a groundbreaking year for awareness, including political awareness of the problems around AMR. We saw the discussion at the heads of state level at the UN, we saw the discussion at the G20, we've seen the discussion increasing in Brussels as well, and we hope to be a part of that into next year in the run-up to the action plan. We were very happy with the Council conclusions and that the Netherlands has put this very firmly on the European agenda as well. And that's because our members take AMR extremely seriously. This is one of our big work areas, one of our big campaign issues, and will be for the coming years as well. What we've been doing and will continue to do is raising certain neglected aspects of AMR. We've released a few reports this year on the environmental and industrial pollution dimension to raise awareness of that, and we hope to see it more strongly followed up in the new action plan. We've been contributing to the ECDC stakeholder process on the guidelines for prudent use in human medicine. And we made AMR the big theme of our annual conference in September this year. And we were discussing why is there so much political resistance to talking about AMR and taking very firm policy action in response. I think more than ever, the messages that we get from the Awareness Day this year and ECDC tell us how urgent it is. We feel very strongly that now we have more than enough evidence to act, and we would like to see a very action-packed action plan coming up. We know the causes, human, animal, industrial, environmental, very clearly. We know that 25,000 deaths is probably already a dramatic underestimate in the EU, and we would like to see that updated. We know the measures, we think, that are needed in each sector. We know what works at a national level. We have fantastic examples from a range of countries across Europe, and in many ways Europe already is a best practice region. What we need to make sure of is that these best practices are replicated everywhere. And when it comes to what works, as has also been very strongly emphasised by the Dutch government, what works really is targets, measurable, enforceable goals. And we would like the action plan to continue that discussion and see how that can be rolled out right across Europe and further afield as well. We do also know where the gaps are. We know the sectors that are not covered. We know the sectors where more action is necessary. It's certainly industrial pollution in the pharmaceutical supply chain is one of those areas. I think we know also what's still needed. The previous action plan had no supporting funds attached to it, and also the funds that are allocated to ECDC to work on AMR are extremely limited for the range of activities that they're expected to do and the range of support that they... I suppose it remains for us to say that we will remain extremely active supporters of antibiotic awareness, and we look forward to engaging with all the other stakeholders and the institutions on how we can have the best possible, most effective action plan from next year. Thank you very much.
Would any of you like to react to that statement?
Maybe briefly. Of course, we cannot comment on what you recommend the Commission to do. But you had a statement about a need for an update of the burden of disease caused by healthcare-associated infections, antimicrobial resistance. This work for healthcare-associated infections has already been published a few weeks ago. An article that shows that when we pick just 6 healthcare-associated infections, the burden in terms of disability-adjusted life years is more than the sum of all the other more than 30 communicable diseases for which we have surveillance data in the EU. So this is published. We're now working at putting antimicrobial resistance or multi-drug resistance as an attribute to these infections, not only healthcare-associated infections, but also tuberculosis, gonorrhea, etc. And we hope to have results in next year.
So again, continuing from this morning, is anyone here from the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations, EFPIA? Could you stand up? Even
Sure.
though you have a microphone, I think it's easier for people to perceive what you're saying if you're standing.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Elizabeth Kuiper, representing FPI, the European Federation of the Pharmaceutical Industry. And I think as last year and last years, we're very grateful to the ECDC for having this event, because especially in the important year of 2016, it stresses once more the importance of AMR and the importance of AMR being in the political agenda. And we as industry are also really very committed to contribute and to also play our part in that discussion. And I would like to make 3 points before going to the more political call I think is important with a view to follow-up action. Because we as an industry in the context of the UN high-level panel also have been working on a contribution from our side with a so-called September roadmap on combating AMR. And we feel it's very important, as it was already lined out, that public-private partnerships are of great importance in order to make sure that we have concerted efforts. So what is already happening in Drive AP, in new drugs for bad bugs, we should continue working in that way. So this is also really a call on all of us to keep working together and to keep stressing the importance of public-private partnerships. For us as a sector, the importance of working on new business models for new antibiotics is of course also of much importance, because it was already pointed out that when it comes to the classic business model, which is based on volume, that's not working in respect to antibiotics because of the resistance problems. So we need to keep working on new business models as well, but that work should go hand in hand with the work on stewardship. And equally important there, we should start working and keep working on stewardship not only in a European context, but also in an international context. Because it was already lined out by previous speakers, a lot is happening, but we should start implementing and working together even more than we already try to do. And then I'm perhaps indeed coming to the most important part and the most political part, the momentum that we all felt we had in 2016 with the G7, the G20, the UN meeting. We should really continue keeping that momentum. And it's a pity that the Commission is already gone, because actually my call was merely also pointing to the Commission, because I think we also would like to call on them in the context of the upcoming G20 meeting to really make sure that what we all consider to be unprecedented as AMR being on the agenda of the UN, we should keep pushing it on the political agenda. So I would like to call on the Commission to also keep it forward to the G20. And if also the panelists having the floor right now can contribute to that and also make clear they work together with the Commission in order to make sure that that's going to happen, I think that would be a very important outcome for us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Reactions to that statement, anyone? No?
Well, maybe
Please go ahead.
if I could. Of course, I don't represent the Commission. I'm not even sure I represent the entire WHO. But you're absolutely right. And this is something that I also say when I present the issue of antimicrobial resistance, is that we are really enjoying lots of momentum, lots of attention, and we're starting to do things, and I fully agree, we know a lot of what can and should be done. The actual implementation, of course, is something that also needs to be embraced by the countries. But then I always say that at one point, antimicrobial resistance will disappear from the news, but it doesn't mean that it will disappear as an issue. So it's very important that countries take ownership of doing something about antimicrobial resistance, investing in their health systems, because many of the drivers of antimicrobial resistance are symbolic of flaws in the health system. So I think one of our main efforts should be, first of all, in the prevention.
And the One Health aspect is very important, and it is the only way we are going to tackle this problem, is by all working together and doing our bit. I would echo what our colleagues from IPRUMA said earlier. We've very strongly supported IPRUMA responsible use of veterinary medicines. We support the SVAC programme at EMA, look at the transparency of the use. If you don't know where and why they're being used, it's very difficult to take action. And finally, we've had a lot of talk about innovation, and innovation is very important, but to go with the innovation, you also need implementation. It's no good coming up with new products, new ideas, if you don't actually get them out into the marketplace and get them into use. And I would also support our colleagues at FPIA for the development of new antibiotics. We do need a new business model. The issues are different on the human and the veterinary side, and the solutions will not be the same, because on the human side, most of it is paid for by governments or insurers. On the veterinary side, it's the farmer. So there will need to be different solutions, but there will need to be new solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any reactions to that statement?
I could react just briefly. I think from the veterinary regulatory perspective, we do understand the difficulties that the animal health industry faces, as outlined by the gentleman from IFAR Europe. This is a big issue for the veterinary medicines producers, and we really have to make best use of the antimicrobials that we have. I think also, just to echo support for the One Health approach, and just from my own experience, I think that working as a member of the AMEG group, where we have human and veterinary colleagues working together, was quite a revelation. I think that we are quite blind to the issues that the different sectors face, and I think it was very useful to work together for us to be able to get a clearer understanding of how these medicines are used on the human side and what the serious consequences are of lack of efficacy of some of the antimicrobials on that side. And likewise, I think it was very good for the human colleagues to gain a much better understanding of the issues that are faced by the animal health side too.
So this seems a good time to ask whether the Federation of Veterinarians of Europe has a comment. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Jan Klaarten. I speak on
European Federation of Veterinarians. First, I would like to congratulate the Commission and ECDC with the 9th European Antibiotic Awareness Day. I think it's very good to see. We are very happy to see that this has become a really sustainable event that goes on year after year and has a good impact in Europe and even beyond Europe, as we see with the World Antibiotic Awareness Day. For us, in the veterinary sector, antimicrobial resistance is a really One Health topic that indeed relates to people, animals and the environment. And what we have done is to make antibiotic resistance part of our all-over strategy. We think standalone actions are good, but it can be better when you make it an integral part of your all-over strategy and that you incorporate it in all the other actions you do. Crucial for fighting AMR is the collaboration with other stakeholders, everyone who has an impact on AMR or who is impacted by AMR. For us, of course, we work a lot in the veterinary, in the animal health field. We work together with farmers, with the pharmaceutical industry, with companion animal owners, etc., to make them aware of antimicrobial resistance and what they can do. But not only within the animal health field, we also work together with the European doctors, the European dentists and the European pharmacists. We have developed leaflets together. You can find them at the entrance. I can recommend you to take them. And they are available in all the EU languages on our website. For us, the most important thing to reduce the use of antimicrobials and to fight antimicrobial resistance is disease prevention. We think it's very important to speak about responsible use, but and that has to be done. When you need to use them, you have to do it in a responsible way. But it's even better when you can avoid to arrive at the point where you have to use them. So disease prevention is for us the crucial thing there, and we try to promote that concept. We are happy to see from the SFAC report that progress is made, but of course it's not enough. We are not there. More has to be done, and it has to be done quicker. What we see also from the reports is the big differences between the different countries. And one of the things we are working on now is we try to bridge the gap between, or the differences between the different professions. Also, let's try if we can bridge the countries, sharing experiences between countries that do better than countries that still have to make more progress. There's one thing to see the figures on the map and the red and the green and the yellow countries. The next step is how do we offer, let's say, the red countries to make progress and to make a step forward. And that's something we're trying to achieve in the federation, between the profession, within the profession, making these links between the different countries. And I think it would be also good for other organizations, institutions, also to see how can we make progress all over Europe so that we can all get under the yellow line. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jukes, Dr. Hugas, do you have any reaction to that?
Just I think that it's very important, first of all, these activities to raise awareness, because there are already examples in the EU of countries that have got major achievements, and countries that need to make those achievements can also look at those countries to benchmark and see what has worked there and also to apply them in their own production system. So I think there is room for improvement, and we hope to see this improvement also in the coming years.
Thank you. Questions from the room? No? Yes, over here, please. Should come on. Yes, there you go, I think.
Okay, thank you. My name is Laurent Louet. I'm working from the European Patient Forum, EPF. I think we agree it's a very, this issue is very teamwork here. We heard about pharmacists, about doctors, about private sector as well, but I think we haven't heard yet about conclusion here, and while you see me coming here, and I think we haven't touched upon the role of patients in this really important chain. At EPF, we believe that if you want to raise awareness, you want to sing the same song again and again, and for that song to be heard, you need to have the patients on your board. We at EPF believe that if patients are empowered with the right information, they will be able to cascade this message about AMR into the community. And then again, you will see probably a decrease in terms of AMR. And I think that's why we all need to work again together. We at EPF, we are working with the EMA, with the ECDC and the WHO for this goal to be achieved. So I'm really thankful to be here and to contribute to this really crucial debate. And again, also notice that indeed patients are a key player in that play. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone care to react to the please?
I can't agree more. I mean, we've been working together, and WHO, ECDC, you, Marion, as moderator, have been trying to highlight the stories of patients, because we know that when we communicate, these are the ones who speak. Maybe we need to work even more together and put all these stories together, because the story of a patient in the US is as relevant if this is for a type of infection that is common and seen everywhere on this planet. So let's put all these stories together.
So since we just heard from patients, which I agree is absolutely crucial, that's where much of my work as a journalist goes, would the European Hospital Federation care to comment? Is anyone here from that group? Yes? Okay. It will come on.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, there you go.
Well, thanks a lot again for the invitation. It has been said a lot. We've talked about hospitals quite a lot. We've been exchanging also some things on the tweets, and maybe I come back to that. One key element for European stakeholders is joint actions. It has been mentioned that a joint action is coming soon. Other colleagues have mentioned that we have not been involved so far. So it's very worrying, because it's a general trend in joint action in Europe that stakeholders are set aside at this. So I would like to emphasize the need, not only at national level, but also at European level, to take into account us, because we are also a way to disseminate the information at national level. There is a lot happening. Today, for example, in France, or yesterday, the minister sent a very strong message. This has been supported by hospital federations quite a lot. So I emphasize again, it's very important that European Commission, sorry, the Commission is not here anymore, but at least on the floor, it's very what we have heard today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Reactions? Anyone to the hospital point of view? No?
I mean, you've seen the Commission asked the CDC to prepare proposals for EU guidelines on prudent use of antimicrobial agents in human medicine. And it was clear that stakeholders should be involved. There have been 2 stakeholder consultations plus a public consultation. What we heard from Deputy Director General Santé, Martin Sechel, was like for the joint action, he envisioned also the involvement of stakeholders. So you heard his reply earlier.
So switching to the outpatient realm, is the European Union of General Practitioners, UEMO, are you here? Yes, please.
Is it working? Yeah. It could be a number of remarks. Oh, sorry. There could be a number of remarks about the topic, but the first one that occurs to me, and I had the opportunity of having a conversation with the Commissioner a few minutes ago, and we share the point of view that those that draft guidelines run the risk of flying very high on the sky, while those that work with the patient are very down to the level of the ground. And we every day see that it's not so easy to change the patient misconceptions about antibiotics. And maybe this needs an approach more based on true stories that patient can understand. The conspiracy issue, this guy is trying to save money, and so he tries not to prescribe antibiotics. or this guy trying to selling vaccines to me, and so he's fostering vaccines, but there is an interest, an economic interest behind. And just few of the stories we hear every day from our patients. And so, in a way, we would like to see this down-to-the-earth approach taking more deeply into the discussion about how to fight the antimicrobial resistance through a more safe prescribing of antibiotics. There are other issues, but the office testing, the foster more widespread knowledge about resistance at a regional level. But the first one I mentioned is the most important to us every day.
Thank you very much. I know we are running out of time. I want to be sure that all the groups that wish to speak have a chance to be heard. Would COPA? Let's come back to agriculture. Would COPA like to speak?
Yes, thank you. Cesar González from Copa Cogeca. Actually, we are happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. And we are even more happy to see in a joint event EFSA, EMA, and ECDC. It's important that the three organizations work together, especially also with the Commission. And to show our commitment, we can only say that, of course, we make part of EP Room as well. And the European farmers are keen to collaborate to tackle AMR. And in order to do so, I think it's important to have more reliable data. It's something we have seen in the last SVAC report. It's not the first time that sometimes the data are not so accurate, or some changes in the collection system may lead to very different analyses. So I think it's something that we can work together on how to harmonize and how to better collect those data without a burden for farmers, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anything to be said about the difficulty of collecting data on the farm?
I'm not directly involved with the SVAC project, but I do understand that they're making improvements to that as we speak. I think they're trying to move towards measuring using the daily defined dosing system of measuring antimicrobial usage. And I think from what I understand, a lot of member states are working very hard to improve their data collection. And it would be great if we could get data collection down to farm level use. That would be a huge bonus in helping us to manage the problem of AMR, but clearly for some member states that's probably a long way off, but we look forward to that day.
Quite a current battle in the United States as well. Who is, okay, so first you and then you, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Elsa Vecino, and I am representing the generic veterinary medicine, so industry side and veterinary. So thank you very much for the invitation and for the quality presentations, and also to see that there is such a good alignment and commitment from everybody here. So I think there is no doubt from this side. At AgBP, we do promote the responsible use of antimicrobials in veterinary medicines. And we also are an IPRUMA partner, and we give them full support in all the materials that are prepared by this organization. Something that was raised by the colleague in the previous session of the generic human medicines is the potential important role of existing antimicrobials, which is something that we have been talking a lot here about innovation and new products, which is indeed important, not only new antimicrobials, but alternatives and diagnostic kits, etc. But we think that there might be very good opportunities in the existing antimicrobials already. Some of them probably unexplored at the full potential with low resistant rates. So I think this is also an area that wasn't highlighted enough today, and an area to further work with the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So good morning, my name is Camille Perrin. I'm working for BEUG, the European Consumer Organization. We represent 41 national independent consumer organizations across Europe. I'd like to say, first of all, that we are very pleased that BEUG was shortlisted for the EU Health Award for NGOs fighting antimicrobial resistance. Indeed, our members have long been educating consumers about antibiotic resistance and the role that they can play as patients to help safeguard these vital drugs. But 2 years ago exactly, on European Antibiotics Awareness Day, we kicked off, together with our members, an EU-wide campaign on the food and farming side of the AMR equation. Indeed, we felt that perhaps this side of the problem was much less known from consumers, although it deserves attention. So it all started with tests on fresh poultry meat that our members carried out in 9 European countries, and the results were striking. Most samples were found to contain resistant bacteria. Some of the samples tested contained multi-resistant bacteria. So that's why we decided to launch this campaign. And the aim of the campaign is to call for tightening up of the rules at EU level on antibiotic use in the farming sector. And we strive to act at 2 levels. First of all, towards consumer. Through their publications in their magazines or on their website, our members raise consumer awareness on antibiotic resistance, its causes and how it can be tackled. Very few consumers actually are aware that the over and the misuse of antibiotics in farming can spur antibiotic resistance, and nor do many of them know that resistant bacteria can spread from farm to them via the environment, via water, or via the food they eat. The second target of our campaign, obviously, is EU policymakers, and we try to convince them of the urgency to tackle antimicrobial resistance from the food and farming perspective, and that's why we can only very much echo the plea that Commissioner Andriukaitis made this morning for the member states to speed up their work on the veterinary medicines proposal, and we hope they will make sure that the final text lives up to the scale of the AMR issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think there's one more. Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2 more. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, European Institute of Women's Health. Much has been said by my colleagues here, which I'd like to reiterate and enforce. Women are the traditional carers in the family, looking after children, aging parents, etc. So I'm looking at the opportunity to create more awareness in the general public. And there we very much bridge the gap with BEUG and also with the European Patients Forum, because we are really talking about prevention and getting avoiding certain things to happen. And so I think that's always a very, very difficult message to get across. But we are doing this through briefings, tweeting, trying to get the message across for the prudent use of antibiotics. And finally, I'd like to say that it really is, it's wonderful to have a new action plan, but I think we need targets in that one. We need teeth, like Nina has said here, because it's all very nice to have an action plan, but it needs to be implemented and maybe also teeth for the action to take place. Thank you.
Okay, in the pink jacket, I think you are our last speaker.
Good afternoon, Alexandra Sana, Council of European Dentists. I just wanted to say that the dentists have been involved in the fight against antimicrobial resistance for several years already. And we have been involved in joint initiatives together with the Federation of Veterinarians and the Standing Committee of European Doctors. You have received the leaflets this morning. And I would like to read a short statement prepared by the chair of our task force antibiotics, Dr. Susie Sanderson. The CED continues to raise awareness about prudent use of antibiotics to its members and their patients, and we can see a positive move to appreciation of the issues over the last years. Although it is not easy to evaluate the changes in prescribing approaches in dentistry in Europe, dentists and their teams are much more conscious about the reasons to contribute to the reduction of antimicrobial resistance. We will continue to promote messages that encourage both patients and clinicians to appreciate that appropriate prescribing in dentistry is intrinsically linked to the provision of a range of clinical interventions in the management of dental infections. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So I think that that concludes that section of the program. Oh wait, we have one more hand. Okay, all right, very last.
Thank you very much. On behalf of community pharmacists, I had to rewrite my little intervention because much has already been said by Commissioner himself that did a little tour of the pharmacies around the place of his work. And also Martin Seychelles, who said that we are the closest to the communities, closest to the patients. And just a couple of things to pick up on other discussions that have been said, and to the fact that very often community pharmacies are somehow underutilized in the whole debate, is that how we see our role, even though you are focusing this year on the secondary care, is that first of all we engage in those conversations when we are dispensing antibiotics, that the duration of the treatment is very important, and responding on the actually environmental issues. We are the ones collecting unused medicines from the population. So we are very happy to take back all the leftovers and dispose them appropriately. And this is not only a contribution to environment, this is also a contribution to actually tackling the problem. So those are not flushed down the toilet and etc. Something else that is very important, it's good that our society knows that antibiotics do not work against the viruses, but what is very important is this conversation that happens in the pharmacy, that actually sore throat, earache, sinusitis is very often does not require treatment of antibiotics. Some over-the-counter products actually can elevate the symptoms, and patients just have to be patient. 5 or 7 days is a lot for the one suffering from cold, but actually this is all you need. And these conversations are provided for free by the one, actually it's around 500,000 of the community pharmacists that are available to all the citizens in the European Union and beyond. So we are there, we are doing campaigns, etc. But what is more important is everyday practice. And this is where I think our group is a great resource to make sure that at the community level, we prevent those patients to get to the hospitals and to actually die from the unnecessary infections, or infections that are resistant to many things that they shouldn't be. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, final statements. Would the four of you like to take your seats again? Thank you. Please help join me in thanking them. So a few brief words from me, and then Dr. Ammon will close us out. What an extraordinary morning. I think it's really remarkable and cheering in the face of this really important, slow-moving global catastrophe that, as I argue, is unrecognized or under-recognized. It's cheering to see how much attention and how much scrutiny is being brought to it. But I don't think any of us should fool ourselves about how difficult the remaining challenges are. I think you heard a lot about that this morning. We've heard that rates of resistance in many organisms remain stubborn, that diseases in both human and animal health require the use of drugs that we very much want to conserve, which is challenging. That tackling these problems, we've heard this over and over again, requires a granularity of effort, really down to the not just the last mile, but the last feet of interaction between patients and community health workers and physicians, both outpatient and in healthcare institutions, and veterinarians and farmers, those relationships are, in some cases, very difficult to negotiate and require a lot of attention. And finally, despite all the international effort and despite events like this 9th annual day today, significant sectors of the public remain nowhere near as aware as we would hope they would be about the problem and the causes of antibiotic resistance and what the remedies may be. So against all of that difficulty, I would say take heart in how much energy there is behind this problem. Look at all the organizations that came to offer their pledges, the engagement on Twitter. It's very significant, the people watching on the live stream. The one thing that I would say that we should be cautious of going forward, while rejoicing in all that energy and how much determination remains for this very difficult and long-lasting problem, is I would caution everyone to pay attention to the calls for this to be as much as possible an international and a global effort. And I think if we examined our data and maybe even our consciences, we would have to recognize that for everything that is done in Europe, for everything that is done in the United States, which has been following Europe in this issue, if we do not also involve the economies of the developing world in attention to how antibiotics are used over the counter in healthcare and especially in agriculture, then nothing that the United States and Europe does is going to right the balance in that scale. We heard during the UN General Assembly that for many low and moderate income nations, antibiotic resistance is just not that much of a priority for governments compared to what seem to be more pressing health threats. So as you work on these very challenging but also very satisfying initiatives in Europe, I would urge you to extend a hand as well to the emerging economies who are very much going to need your help. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm going to turn the end of the program over to Dr. Ammon.
Marin, and thank all of you. It was really an encouraging morning. I mean, it confirmed basically that we're dealing here with a threat to patient safety, but far beyond. And we also have seen that our actions in the past had some effect, but not yet sufficient. And it's good that all of you are here because there is enough work for each and every one of you left. It is good also that the problem is now high on the political agenda. And in order to maximize the effect and really create synergies, we now need to do a few things. We need to be coordinated. As the colleague from the Patient Forum has said, we have to sing the same song. We have to align our messages and we have to do it all over and over again. We have to avoid duplication and we have to make sure that we cover the gaps. One gap Marin mentioned, not to forget those areas that cannot raise the momentum right now, but are important also of being included. We have seen that we can learn from each other. There are best practices in some of the countries and they should be well, utilized as much as possible. So we have to provide fora where this exchange can happen. We have heard about that it's good to start actions, but we need to ensure they're sustainable. And I was particularly pleased to hear that representative of student associations were here because we are talking about raising awareness of doctors and other professions, but I think it has to go into the education of the respective professions. Now, ECDC will continue to provide data, to support countries in improving their systems so that the data get even better. We will continue to work with partners that were represented here. And we also will provide the support to countries on a very individual and targeted basis. Because what we have seen and still see is that there are differences over Europe. So we are really doing country visits and going with countries through their programs to really tackle where the different issues are, to also provide material that can be adapted for the countries and put to the best use. Now, this is also an opportunity to say thank you for all the presenters, for presenting their work and being in time or not in time. But I think it was very valuable information that we received. I would like to thank all of you in the audience for your really lively discussion and adding very valid points that we can take into account to improve the actions in the future. And I also would like to thank my staff at ECDC for providing the data. So the staff in the program for antimicrobial resistance and healthcare-associated infections, and the staff from the communication unit to organize and prepare the event. So we have seen no one country and no one discipline can tackle this by themselves. So we are all in this together. Patients, doctors, nurses, doctors in practice, doctors in hospitals, pharmacists, the dentists, the respective students of these disciplines, farmers and veterinarians in Europe and globally. I think we should make sure that this momentum that we all felt here is taken forward and that we take care of the future now. Thank you very much and have a safe trip home.
That concludes our observance of European Antibiotic Awareness Day. Thank you all for coming. Lunch awaits you.
And I forgot to thank Mary for a very considerate moderation. You didn't get impatient when the people went over time, so you let everybody speak, and that was a great achievement. Thank you for a terrific job.
Thank you for having me.